Chapter 1. The rejection ceremony wasn't supposed to end like this. Alara stood in the center of the grand hall, blood dripping from her palms where her nails had carved crescent moons into her skin. The entire court had gone silent, not the respectful kind of silence, but the kind that comes right before a storm tears through everything you've ever known. Every wolf in attendance had frozen mid-breath, their eyes locked on her, and in that moment, she realized what she'd done. She'd accepted it. Alpha Kale stood 10 feet away, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. His silver eyes that once looked at her like she was the answer to every question he'd never dared to ask now, burned with something between fury and disbelief. He'd expected her to beg, to cry, to crumble at his feet like every other rejected mate in the history of their kind. But Alara wasn't every other wolf. You. Except. Kale's voice came out strangled, like the words were choking him. I accept your rejection, Alpha. Her voice rang clear through the hall, steady as steel even though her heart was shattering into 1,000 pieces inside her chest. I, Alara Thorn of the Moonshadow Pack, accept your rejection and sever our mate bond. May you find happiness with another. The traditional words. The final words. The words that should have ended this nightmare quietly. But the moment they left her lips, the temperature in the hall dropped 20 degrees. Frost crept across the marble floor, spreading out from where she stood in crystalline patterns that looked like wings. The candles flickered, then blazed white-hot, their flames turning silver, and deep within Alara's chest, something that had been sleeping for 23 years cracked open like an egg. Power flooded through her veins, ancient, wild, and absolutely furious. No. Someone whispered from the crowd. No. It can't be. The king rose from his throne. Alara's eyes snapped to him. King Aldrich, Kale's father, the ruler of the Northern Territories and the wolf who'd insisted this rejection happen in the first place. His face had gone pale, his massive frame trembling as he stared at her like she'd just sprouted a second head. Impossible. Aldrich breathed. The bloodline died out. We made sure he cut himself off, but the damage was done. Made sure. The pieces clicked together in Alara's mind with horrifying clarity. Her parents' deaths when she was 3. The way she'd been shuffled between packs, never quite fitting in, never quite right. The strange dreams of silver wolves and ancient temples. The power she'd always had to suppress, to hide, to pretend didn't exist because showing it meant being labeled dangerous. They'd known. They'd all known. And they'd tried to erase her. Seize her! Aldrich's roar shattered the frozen moment. She's a Silvermane. She can't be allowed to. Alara didn't wait to hear the rest. She turned and ran. The hall erupted into chaos behind her. Wolves shifted mid-stride, their howls shaking the rafters. Guards lunged for her, their claws extended, their eyes wild with the king's fury. But Alara was already moving, her body responding to instincts she didn't know she had. She burst through the side doors and into the night, the winter air hitting her like a slap. Snow was falling thick, heavy flakes that would cover her tracks within minutes if she could just get far enough away. The palace garden stretched before her, a maze of frozen fountains and bare trees that led to the forest beyond. Run, something whispered in her mind. An ancient voice, feminine and fierce. Run, little flame. They're not ready for what you'll become. Her feet flew over the snow-covered ground. Behind her, she could hear them dozens of wolves pouring out of the palace, their snarls and howls filling the night. Kale's voice rose above them all, commanding and desperate. Find her. She can't leave the territory. Something in Alara's chest twisted at the sound of his voice. Even now, even after everything, the severed mate bond ached like a phantom limb. But she couldn't think about that. Couldn't think about the way he'd looked at her 3 days ago when he'd told her he was choosing Lady Seraphina instead, that his duty to the pack came before his heart, that Alara wasn't enough. She crashed through a hedge and stumbled, her shoulder slamming into a tree. Pain exploded down her arm, but she forced herself forward. The forest was close now. She could see the tree line, dark and promising. If she could just reach it, if she could lose them in the ancient woods. A wolf landed in front of her, massive and gray with blue eyes that glowed in the darkness. Dane. Kale's beta. Her friend. Or, He used to be. Elara, stop. Dane's voice was gentle, even in his wolf form a rare gift among their kind. Please, we don't want to hurt you. Then let me go. She backed up, her hands raised. The silver flame was dancing just beneath her skin now, begging to be released. She could feel it building, a pressure that was going to explode if she didn't. You know I can't do that. Dane took a step closer. The king has declared you a threat. If you run, you'll be hunted by every pack in the northern territories. But if you come back, if you submit to the council's judgment. Submit? The word came out as a laugh, sharp and broken. They tried to kill my entire bloodline, Dane. You think I'm going to walk back in there and let them finish the job? Your bloodline was dangerous. The Silvermanes nearly destroyed us all with their power. No. Alara's voice dropped to a whisper, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. They were destroyed because they were feared. There's a difference. More wolves were closing in. She could see them, shadows moving through the gardens, cutting off every escape route except one. They were hurting her, driving her toward the cliffs on the eastern edge of the territory, where the land dropped away into nothing but rocks and river far below. They were going to force her to surrender, or to jump. The silver flame inside her roared in response. And this time, Elara couldn't hold it back. Light exploded from her palms, brilliant and blinding. Dane yelped and stumbled backward, his eyes squeezed shut. The other wolves scattered, their howls turning to whimpers, and Elara ran. She ran like her life depended on it because it did. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't stop. The forest swallowed her whole, the ancient trees closing in overhead until the moonlight barely penetrated the canopy. She could still hear them behind her, but they were more cautious now, more afraid. Good, let them be afraid. The ground beneath her feet started to slope upward, becoming rocky and treacherous. She was heading toward the mountains, toward the wild lands where even the northern packs didn't venture. Stories said those mountains were cursed, that wolves who entered them never came out the same. Right now, Elara would take cursed over dead. A howl rose behind her, Kale's howl, the alpha call that demanded obedience from every wolf in his pack. Alara's legs tried to stop, her body responding to years of conditioning, but she gritted her teeth and pushed forward, breaking through the invisible chains of pack hierarchy through sheer force of will. She wasn't pack anymore. He'd made sure of that. The trees thinned ahead, and suddenly she was standing at the edge of a ravine. The river below was a silver ribbon in the darkness, beautiful and deadly. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit were getting closer. She could hear Kale's paws thundering against the forest floor, could feel his presence like a weight against her spine. There was nowhere left to run. Elara closed her eyes and took a breath. The silver flame inside her was still there, still burning, still waiting. She'd spent her whole life suppressing it, hiding it, being ashamed of it. But maybe that had been the wrong choice all along. If you're going to fear me anyway, she thought, then I might as well give you a reason. She turned to face them just as Kale burst from the tree line. He was in his wolf form, a massive black beast with those devastating silver eyes. Beautiful and terrible and heartbreaking. For just a moment, their eyes met, and she saw something flicker in his gaze. Regret, maybe. Or recognition of what he'd lost. But it was too late for regrets. I accept your rejection, Alpha, Elara said again, softer this time. And I reject this pack, this territory, and this life. You wanted me gone? Congratulations, you win. Then she spread her arms and fell backward into the darkness. The last thing she heard before the world went black was Kale's anguished roar, raw and broken, echoing through the mountains like a curse. If you haven't already, subscribe to Crimson Romance Collections. Because this is just the beginning. And trust me, you're going to want to know what happens when a rejected wolf discovers she's so much more than anyone ever gave her credit for. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me if you're Team Elara or Team Kale, and let's dive deeper into this tale together. The best is yet to come. Chapter 2. Elara should have died. The fall should have killed her, shattered every bone in her body, left her broken on the rocks below like so many foolish wolves who'd underestimated the ravine's depth. But instead, she woke to the sound of water rushing nearby, and pain singing through every nerve in her body. Not dead. Somehow, impossibly, not dead. She tried to move and immediately regretted it. Her ribs screamed in protest, her left ankle was definitely broken, and there was a gash on her forehead that had bled enough to mat her hair to her face. But she was alive, lying on a narrow strip of rocky shore beside the river, the dawn light just beginning to paint the sky above in shades of gray and gold. The silver flame had saved her. She knew it instinctively, even though she had no memory of calling it. In that moment of freefall, her power had wrapped around her like wings, slowing her descent just enough that the landing was brutal instead of fatal. Small mercies. Alara forced herself to sit up, biting back a whimper as her ribs protested. She needed to move. Needed to get farther away before Kale and his wolves found a way down here. They'd be searching for her body, and when they didn't find it, I wouldn't try to stand if I were you. The voice came from behind her, deep and smooth as aged whiskey, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Alara's head snapped around, and she immediately wished she hadn't moved so fast. Pain exploded through her skull, but she ignored it, focusing on the figure standing in the shadows of the cliff face. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar, and eyes that seemed to shift color in the early morning light. Gold one moment, amber the next, with flecks of green that reminded her of deep forests. He was dressed simply in dark clothes that looked expensive despite their simplicity, and he carried himself with the kind of easy confidence that spoke of power, alpha power, but not her alpha, not Kale. This was something else entirely. Who are you? Alara's voice came out rougher than she intended, her throat raw from screaming during the fall. Someone who's been waiting a very long time to meet you, Alara Thorne. He stepped closer, moving with a predator's grace, though I'll admit, I expected our introduction to be less dramatic. Her blood ran cold. How do you know my name? I know a lot of things about you. He crouched down beside her, close enough that she could see the sharp angles of his face, the silver scar that cut through his left eyebrow. His scent hit her, then pine and smoke and something wild, something that made her wolf stir with interest despite her injuries. I know you're a Silvermane. I know you were rejected last night by Alpha Kale of the Northern Territories. And I know that right now, you're trying to decide if you can shift with that broken ankle and run before I catch you. Alara's hands clenched. You've been watching me? Watching over you, he corrected, his voice gentling slightly. There's a difference. I don't need anyone watching over me. No? He raised an eyebrow, gesturing at her battered body. Because from where I'm standing, you could use all the help you can get. She wanted to argue, wanted to snarl at him to leave her alone, but the truth was undeniable. She was hurt, hunted, and had nowhere to go. Pride wouldn't keep her alive, not against an entire pack determined to eliminate the last Silvermane. What do you want? She asked instead, meeting his strange, shifting eyes with all the defiance she could muster. Something flickered across his face. Respect, maybe, or amusement. Right now, I want to get you somewhere safe before your former packmates find their way down here. After that, he stood, offering her his hand. After that, we'll talk about what you are and why it matters. Alara stared at his outstretched hand. Every instinct she had was screaming at her, half saying danger, the other half saying trust. It was the strangest sensation, like her wolf recognized something in him that her human mind couldn't quite grasp. I don't even know your name, she said. Theron. The name rolled off his tongue like a secret. Alpha Theron of the Shadow Peak Pack. Shadow Peak. Alara's breath caught. She'd heard stories about Shadow Peak whispers, really, because no one talked about them openly. They were the pack that lived in the mountains, the wolves who kept to themselves and answered to no king or council. Dangerous, mysterious. Some said they practiced the old magic, the kind that had been forbidden after the Silvermane purge. Shadow Peak isn't supposed to exist, she whispered. Theron's smile was sharp as a blade. Neither are you, little flame. And yet here we both are. A howl echoed from above Kale's voice, closer than she'd expected. They'd found a path down, or they were making one. Either way, She was out of time. Theron's expression shifted, becoming harder. Decide now, Alara. Come with me willingly, or I'll carry you. But either way, you're not staying here to be captured. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care what happens to me? He looked at her then. Really looked at her. And there was something in his eyes that made her heart skip. Something ancient and knowing, and impossibly sad. Because I made a promise to your mother, he said quietly. 20 years ago, when she knew they were coming for your family, she made me swear that if anything happened to her, I would find you. I would protect you. And I would make sure you lived long enough to understand what you really are. The world tilted sideways. You knew my mother? I knew your whole family. Another howl, this one from Dane. They were getting closer. Theron's jaw tightened. But we don't have time for this now. Trust me, or don't, your choice. But make it fast. Alara looked up at the cliff face, where she could now see shapes moving against the morning sky. Wolves, dozens of them, searching for her. Kale would be with them, the alpha who'd rejected her, who'd chosen duty over their mate bond, who'd let his father declare her a threat to be eliminated. Then she looked back at Theron, this stranger who claimed to have known her family, who'd apparently been watching over her for years without her knowledge, who was offering her something she hadn't had in a very long time, a choice. She reached up and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid, and he pulled her to her feet with surprising gentleness. Pain shot through her ankle, and she swayed. Without hesitation, Theron swept her up into his arms like she weighed nothing. I can walk, she protested weakly. No, you can't. He was already moving, carrying her away from the shore and toward a narrow crevice in the cliff face that she hadn't noticed before. But your pride is noted. Despite everything, the pain, the fear, the absolute insanity of the situation, Alara almost laughed. The crevice led to a tunnel, dark and winding, clearly carved by water over countless years. Theron navigated it with ease, never stumbling even though he was carrying her, and the light was almost non-existent. His steps were sure, purposeful, like he'd walked this path 1,000 times. Where are we going? Alara asked, her voice echoing slightly off the stone walls. Somewhere they can't follow. The tunnels beneath the mountains are old, older than the packs, older than the wars, older than most wolves remember. They're protected by magic that your former pack won't be able to breach. Magic? She'd heard the stories, but she'd always thought they were just that, stories. I thought magic died out with the old bloodlines. Most of it did. Theron's voice was grim. But not all. Your bloodline, the Silvermanes, were the strongest magic users our kind ever produced. When the other packs turned on them, they didn't just kill your family. They tried to erase everything they'd created, everything they'd known. But some things. He glanced down at her, his eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Some things can't be destroyed. They just go dormant. Waiting. A shiver ran through Alara that had nothing to do with the cold. Waiting for what? For someone worthy to wake them up again. The tunnel opened into a cavern so vast that Alara couldn't see the ceiling, even with her enhanced wolf vision. And it was beautiful stalactites, dripped from above like frozen waterfalls. Crystals embedded in the walls caught the faint light and threw it back in rainbow patterns, and in the center of it all was a pool of water so clear it looked like liquid glass. But it was what surrounded the pool that made Alara's breath catch. Symbols. Hundreds of them, carved into the stone floor in concentric circles around the water. They glowed with a faint silver light, pulsing in rhythm with something Alara could feel in her chest. Her heartbeat, her power, the flame that had been burning inside her since the moment she accepted Kale's rejection. What is this place? She whispered. A temple. Theron set her down carefully on a flat stone near the pool's edge. One of the last Silvermane sacred sites still standing. Your ancestors built it 3,000 years ago, back when our kind first learned to shift. They used it for rituals, for healing, for connecting with the old magic. Alara stared at the glowing symbols, feeling something deep inside her responding to them. Recognition, like coming home to a place she'd never been. Why did you bring me here? Theron knelt in front of her, his expression serious. Because you need to heal before we can move again. And because... He hesitated, like he was choosing his words carefully. Because you need to start understanding what you are, Alara. The rejection broke something open inside you. I felt it the moment it happened. Your power is awake now. And it's only going to get stronger. If you don't learn to control it, it will consume you. Fear lanced through her chest. The king said my bloodline was dangerous, that we nearly destroyed everything. Your bloodline was powerful, Theron corrected. And yes, with great power comes the potential for great destruction, but also great creation, great protection, great change. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of blood-matted hair from her face. His touch was surprisingly gentle. The other packs feared what they couldn't control, so they destroyed it instead. They killed your family, burned your histories, and rewrote the stories to make your ancestors into monsters. Were they? The question came out small. Monsters? Were they perfect? No. Were they monsters? No more than any of us. Theron's eyes held hers. Your grandmother could call down lightning from a clear sky. Your grandfather could heal mortal wounds with a touch. Your mother. His voice softened. Your mother could see the future in the flames. She knew what was coming. She knew they would kill her and your father. And she knew that you would survive. Tears burned in Alara's eyes. Why? Why did she let them kill her if she knew? Because she also saw what you would become. Theron stood, moving to the edge of the pool. She saw a world where the packs were at war, where the old ways were dying, where our kind was forgetting what it meant to be truly wild. And she saw you standing in the ashes of the old world, with the power to forge something new. He turned back to face her, and in the silver light of the temple, he looked like something out of legend himself, dangerous and beautiful and utterly certain. You're not just a Silvermane, Alara. You're the last Silvermane. The prophecy your mother saw wasn't about destruction. It was about rebirth. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning Alara couldn't quite grasp. Outside, beyond the tunnels and the stone and the ancient magic, she could hear howling. Kale and his pack, still searching, still hunting. But in here, in this place of power and memory and possibility, Alara felt something shift inside her. The silver flame that had been wild and chaotic and terrifying began to settle, to listen, like it recognized this place the same way her soul did. I don't know how to be what you're describing, she said, her voice breaking. I don't know how to be powerful. I've spent my whole life trying to be small, to be acceptable, to be enough. Stop. Theron crossed back to her, his intensity almost overwhelming. You were never meant to be small. You were never meant to be acceptable. And you were always, always enough. It was the world around you that was lacking, not you. Something cracked open in Alara's chest at those words. All the years of being told she was too much, too wild, too strange, too other. All the time she tried to dim her light so others wouldn't be uncomfortable. All the rejection and shame and fear. And here was this stranger, this alpha from the mountains, telling her that she'd been right all along. She wasn't the problem. They were. Will you teach me? The question came out before she could stop it. To control the power. To understand what I am. Theron's smile was slow and fierce and full of promise. Little flame, I'll do better than that. I'll teach you to embrace it, to wield it, to become the wolf your mother knew you could be. He offered his hand again. And this time, when Alara took it, there was no hesitation, only possibility. Chapter 3. The water in the sacred pool had healing properties. Alara discovered this when Theron guided her to its edge and told her to immerse herself completely. She'd been skeptical, her ribs were screaming, her ankle was swollen to twice its normal size, and the gash on her forehead throbbed with every heartbeat. But the moment she slipped into the water, warmth flooded through her body like liquid sunlight. The pain didn't disappear immediately. Instead, it transformed into something else. A tingling sensation that spread from her injured ankle up through her leg, across her torso, and into every bruised and battered part of her. The water itself seemed alive, responding to her presence, glowing with that same silver light as the symbols carved into the stone. Your ancestors blessed this pool, Theron said from where he sat on the edge, watching her with those unsettling color-shifting eyes. Silvermane blood runs strong with healing magic, The water remembers. Alara floated on her back, staring up at the cavern ceiling that disappeared into shadows. How long have you known? About me? Since you were 3 years old. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. Your mother contacted me 2 weeks before the attack. She didn't tell me everything couldn't, because the future she saw was fragmented, full of possibilities that shifted depending on choices not yet made. But she told me enough. She told me you would survive, that you would be hidden among the common packs, raised without knowledge of your heritage, and that when the time was right, your power would wake, and you just watched? For 20 years? There was no accusation in her voice, only curiosity, and maybe a little hurt. Theron was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his words were measured, careful. I wanted to take you. The night your parents died, I was ready to storm whatever pack had sheltered you and bring you to Shadow Peak where you'd be safe. But your mother made me promise not to interfere until your power manifested. She said if I took you too early, if I told you what you were before you were ready, it would break you instead of making you stronger. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his gaze intense. So I watched. I made sure no pack treated you too harshly. I dealt with threats you never knew existed. And I waited, Alara. For 20 goddamn years, I waited for you to be ready. Something in his voice made her chest tighten. There was frustration there. Yes. But also something deeper. Something that sounded almost like longing. She pushed the thought away. Tell me about them. My parents. My family. I don't remember anything before the fire. The fire, Theron repeated, his expression darkening. Is that what they told you? That your parents died in a fire? Yes. The pack that took me in said there was an accident. That my parents' house burned down with them inside, and I was the only survivor because I'd wandered outside to play. Even as she said it, the story felt hollow. It had always felt hollow, but she'd had nothing else to fill the emptiness with. There was no accident. Theron's voice went hard. It was an execution. 12 packs came together that night, an unprecedented alliance, because they were terrified of what your family represented. Your father, Garrett Silvermane, was the most powerful alpha of his generation. He could call the elements themselves to his command. Your mother, Lissa, could see the threads of fate and pull them like a harpist playing a song. He stood, pacing now, his movements restless. Together, they were unstoppable. They wanted to unite the packs under a new order, one based on magic and mutual respect, rather than territory and dominance. Some packs loved them for it, others, his jaw clenched, others saw them as a threat to the way things had always been. Alara pulled herself to the edge of the pool, her body already feeling stronger, the pain reduced to a dull ache. So they killed them. They tried to kill all of you. You were supposed to die that night too, a 3-year-old child, eliminated because of the blood in your veins. Theron's eyes flashed gold, but your mother saw it coming. She cast a spell, an old one, forbidden even among the Silvermanes. She hid your power, buried it so deep that even you couldn't feel it, made you seem like just another wolf, ordinary and unremarkable. A spell? Alara touched her chest, where the silver flame now burned. Is that why I never shifted properly? Why my wolf always felt distant? Your mother didn't just hide your power, Alara. She hid your wolf, your true form. Theron crouched beside her, his voice dropping. What you think of as your wolf. The form you've shifted into your whole life that's just a shadow. A echo. Your real wolf has been sleeping inside you, waiting for the spell to break. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her wolf, the companion that every shifter connected with from childhood, the instinctual part of herself that she'd always relied on, it wasn't even real? No, she whispered. No, that can't be right. I've shifted hundreds of times. I've felt my wolf. You've felt a construct your mother created to protect you. A disguise. Theron's expression was sympathetic but firm. And it worked, Alara. For 20 years it worked perfectly. You passed every test, fit into every pack, never raised suspicion. But the spell was designed to break under specific conditions. Alara's hands were shaking. She clenched them into fists. What conditions? True rejection by a mate bond. Theron's voice gentled. Your mother knew that if you found your mate and they accepted you, the spell would hold for your entire life. You could live normal, safe, ordinary. But if your mate rejected you, he reached out, his fingers barely brushing her shoulder. The pain of that rejection would shatter the spell like glass, and everything your mother hid would come flooding back. The rejection ceremony. Kale's cold silver eyes. The words that had torn her heart in half. I, Alpha Kale, of the Northern Territories, reject you, Alara Thorne, as my mate. And her response, spoken with a dignity she hadn't known she possessed. I accept your rejection. The moment those words left her lips, the world had changed. The temperature had dropped. Frost had spread across the floor. And the power, oh gods, the power had exploded through her like a dam breaking. He didn't just reject me, Alara said slowly, pieces clicking into place. He set me free, in a way. Theron stood, offering his hand to help her from the pool. Though I doubt he understood what he was doing. The Northern Territories' king, Aldrich, he's old enough to have been alive during the Purge. The moment your power manifested, he recognized it. That's why he ordered your capture. Alara accepted his hand and climbed out, water streaming from her clothes. Her ankle held her weight, now not perfectly, but well enough. The pool had done its work. He said they'd made sure my bloodline died out. He knew about me. I suspect he's always known, or at least suspected. Theron picked up a dark cloak from where it lay draped over a stone and wrapped it around her shoulders. The question is why he allowed his son to bond with you in the first place. Mate bonds aren't random. They're drawn by the soul, by compatibility, by destiny. The cloak smelled like him, pine and smoke and wild things. Alara pulled it tighter, grateful for the warmth. Maybe he thought the bond would keep my power locked away. If Kale accepted me, the spell would have held. But Kale rejected you instead. Something flickered across Theron's face. Why? That was the question, wasn't it? The one that had been eating at Alara since the moment Kale had called her to his office 3 days ago and delivered the news like he was discussing pack logistics. I've chosen Lady Seraphina as my Luna. The council agrees she's better suited for the role. You understand, don't you? It's not personal. It's just what's best for the pack. Not personal. As if severing a mate bond, the most sacred connection their kind could experience, was comparable to rearranging a meeting schedule. He said I wasn't suitable to be Luna, Alara said, her voice flat. That Lady Seraphina had the breeding, the training, the political connections that I lacked. That the Northern Territories needed a Luna who could navigate court politics and secure alliances, not. She swallowed hard. Not an orphan with no family and no prospects. Theron's expression went dangerous. He called you an orphan. I am an orphan. You're the last heir of the most powerful bloodline in wolf history. Theron's voice was low and fierce. Your family didn't need political connections because they were the politics. They shaped the world around them, and every pack bowed to their power. You're not an orphan, Alara. You're a queen without a throne. The words should have felt empowering. Instead, they just made her tired. A queen without a throne is just someone with nothing, she said quietly. Theron studied her for a long moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he was seeing straight through her, past the defenses she'd built over 20 years of being told she wasn't enough. Do you know what I think? He said finally. I think Aldrich told his son to reject you. I think the king recognized what you were, or suspected it, and realized that if Kale accepted the mate bond with a Silvermane, your power would stay hidden forever. But if Kale rejected you, he gestured at the glowing symbols around them. The spell breaks, your power manifests, and suddenly, the king has exactly the excuse he needs to eliminate the last Silvermane threat in front of the entire court. The theory made horrible sense. But why would Kale agree? Rejecting your mate, it's not just painful. It's agonizing, Theron finished. It goes against every instinct we have. But Kale is his father's son, trained from birth to put duty above everything else. If Aldrich convinced him that accepting you would somehow endanger the pack, he shook his head. Some wolves can be manipulated into almost anything if you frame it as their responsibility. Alara thought about Kale's face during the rejection ceremony, the way his hands had trembled, even as his voice stayed steady, the muscle jumping in his jaw, the brief flash of something that might have been regret in his silver eyes. Had he wanted to reject her? Or had he been following orders, sacrificing his own happiness for what he believed was the greater good? Did it even matter? I saw him, you know, she said suddenly. The night before the rejection ceremony. I went to his rooms to beg him to reconsider, to at least talk to me about it. And I heard voices inside. Theron went very still. What kind of voices? Him and Lady Seraphina. The memory tasted like ash. She was laughing, saying something about how patient she'd been, how long she'd waited for him to see sense. And he, Alara's throat tightened. He told her she was right, that he should have chosen her from the start, before the mate bond complicated everything. Alara, do you know what the worst part is? She looked up at Theron, and she knew her eyes were glowing now, silver light spilling from them like tears. I would have forgiven him. If he'd come to me honestly, if he'd said he didn't want the bond, that he loved someone else, I would have been heartbroken, but I would have accepted it. But he didn't even give me that much respect. He made me stand in front of the entire court and be rejected like I was nothing. Like I was an embarrassment he needed to formally dispose of. The silver flame inside her was rising again, responding to her emotion. The water in the pool began to churn, and the symbols on the floor blazed brighter. Easy, Theron said, his hand on her shoulder. Not restraining, just grounding. Your power is tied to your emotions right now. Until you learn control, strong feelings will trigger it. Alara forced herself to breathe, to push the anger and hurt down into that deep place inside where she'd been storing unwanted emotions for years. Slowly, the light dimmed. The water settled. I don't want to feel this way, she said. I don't want him to still have this power over me. He doesn't. Theron's grip on her shoulder tightened slightly. The pain you're feeling? That's not power he has over you. That's your heart processing betrayal, which is natural and necessary. But Kale himself? He's nothing to you now. The bond is broken. He made his choice. Then why does it still hurt so much? Because mate bonds aren't just magical connections, they're emotional ones. Even broken, the echo lingers. Theron's expression softened. But echoes fade. Alara, give it time. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that someday she'd think about Kale and feel nothing but indifference. But right now, with the rejection still fresh and her entire world turned upside down, it felt impossible. Come on, Theron said, releasing her shoulder and moving toward a passage on the far side of the cavern. You need food and real rest. The pool healed your body, but your spirit needs time too. Alara followed him, the cloak trailing behind her. Where are we going? Deeper into the mountain. Shadow Peak territory starts about 2 miles from here, through passages your former pack won't be able to follow. Once we're there, you'll be under my protection. Aldrich and his wolves won't dare cross that boundary. Because Shadow Peak is that powerful? Theron glanced back at her, and his smile was sharp and knowing. Because Shadow Peak remembers the old laws, and according to the old laws, any wolf who seeks sanctuary in our territory is granted it, no exceptions. Aldrich can rage all he wants, but if he violates that law, every pack in the mountain territories will turn on him. They walked in silence for a while, the passage narrowing and then widening again, the air growing cooler. Alara's mind was spinning with everything Theron had told her. Her parents, the spell, her true wolf, still sleeping inside her. The prophecy her mother had seen. Theron? She said finally. Earlier you said my mother saw me standing in the ashes of the old world, forging something new. What did she mean by that? He stopped walking, turned to face her fully, and in his eyes, she saw something that made her breath catch. Fear, not of her, but for her. War is coming, Alara. The packs are fracturing, the old alliances are crumbling, and wolves like Aldrich are consolidating power by any means necessary. Your mother saw it all 20 years ago, the collapse, the chaos, the bloodshed. He stepped closer. But she also saw you, standing at the center of it all, with the power to either save our kind or watch it destroy itself. The weight of those words settled on Alara's shoulders like a physical thing. No pressure, right? She said weakly. Theron's expression gentled. You don't have to carry this alone. That's what I'm here for. What Shadow Peak is here for. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care so much? You said you made a promise to my mother. But that was 20 years ago. You could have walked away. Told yourself you'd done enough. Because I loved her. The words were quiet but absolute. Not romantically, your mother was mated to your father, and their bond was sacred. But she was my closest friend. We grew up together, trained together, dreamed of a better world together, and when she died, his voice cracked. I wasn't there. I couldn't save her. But I can save you. I can make sure her sacrifice, her vision, wasn't for nothing. Alara's eyes burned with unshed tears. For her mother, who'd given up her life to protect a daughter she'd never see grow up. For Theron, carrying the weight of a promise for 2 decades. For herself, orphaned and alone, and now burdened with a destiny she never asked for. I don't know if I can be what everyone needs me to be, she whispered. Theron reached out and cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing away the tears that had started to fall. You don't have to be anything but yourself, Alara. The power, the prophecy, the destiny, all of that will unfold in its own time. Right now, you just need to survive, to heal, to learn who you really are beneath all the masks you've worn. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Come on, little flame, Theron said, releasing her and turning back to the passage. Let's get you home. Home. The word echoed in Alara's mind as they walked deeper into the mountain. She'd never really had a home, just a series of places she'd stayed until she wasn't welcome anymore. But maybe, just maybe, Shadow Peak could be different. Maybe she could finally stop running and learn to stand and fight instead. Chapter 4. Shadow Peak wasn't what Alara expected. She'd imagined something dark and foreboding, a fortress carved into black stone. Maybe, with wolves that moved like ghosts and spoke in riddles. Instead, she emerged from the mountain passages into a valley that took her breath away. The settlement was built into the mountainside itself, houses and buildings that seemed to grow organically from the rock, connected by bridges and pathways that spiraled upward like a nautilus shell. Gardens bloomed impossibly at this altitude, their flowers glowing faintly with bioluminescence as dusk settled over the peaks. And everywhere there were symbols, the same symbols from the sacred pool, carved into doorways, painted on walls, woven into banners that hung from the bridges. They pulsed with that gentle silver light, and Alara could feel them humming in her bones like a song she'd forgotten she knew. Welcome to Shadow Peak, Theron said, watching her reaction with what might have been amusement. The last free pack in the territories. Wolves emerged from the buildings as they passed, drawn by curiosity. But unlike the Northern Territories, where Alara had always felt measured and found wanting, these wolves looked at her with something else. Recognition. Reverence. It made her deeply uncomfortable. Why are they staring? She murmured to Theron. Because they know what you are. He guided her toward a larger structure near the center of the settlement, built around an enormous tree that shouldn't have been able to grow at this elevation, but somehow did. Shadow Peak has always been a sanctuary for wolves who didn't fit the normal molds. Seers, healers, those with old magic in their blood. We've been waiting for a Silvermane to return for a very long time. I'm not returned. I've never been here before. Haven't you? Theron pushed open a door carved with intricate designs, wolves and flames intertwined. Your mother brought you here when you were 2 years old. You wouldn't remember, but the pack does. You played in these gardens. You laughed in these halls. Shadow Peak was supposed to be your home. Before. He trailed off, the unspoken tragedy hanging between them. The interior of the building was warm and inviting, lit by more of those glowing symbols and what looked like foxfire in glass orbs. An elderly woman sat by a fireplace, her hair pure white, but her posture straight as a blade. When she saw Alara, she rose with surprising grace. Lissa's daughter, the woman breathed, her eyes milky with age but somehow still sharp, fixed on Alara's face. "Oh, child. You look so much like her." "This is Mira," Theron said gently. "She was your mother's teacher, the most powerful seer in 3 generations." Mira crossed the room and took Alara's hands in hers. Her skin was papery, thin but warm, and the moment they touched, Alara felt something pass between them. A jolt of recognition, like their magic was speaking a language their mouths couldn't form. "I knew you would come," Mira said, tears streaming down her weathered face. "I saw it, the night your mother died. She came to me in a vision and said, 'Wait for her, Mira. Wait for my silver flame. She'll need you when the time comes.'" The old woman squeezed Alara's hands. "And here you are." Alara didn't know what to say. The emotion in the room was overwhelming. All these people who'd been waiting for her, believing in some version of her that existed in prophecies and visions. She was just a rejected wolf who'd spent her whole life trying to be invisible. How could she possibly live up to these expectations? "Mira," Theron said quietly. "She's exhausted. Perhaps we should." "No." Mira's voice turned sharp. "There's no time for exhaustion." The moment she manifested, the wheels were set in motion. Every pack with eyes to see will know now. The Silvermane bloodline lives. And they'll come for her, Theron. You know they will. Then we'll protect her. Protection isn't enough. Mira released Alara's hands and moved to a shelf lined with ancient books and scrolls. She selected one, a leather-bound tome that looked older than the mountains themselves, and brought it back. She needs to understand what she is, what she's meant to do. The book landed on the table with a heavy thud. Mira opened it carefully, the pages crackling with age, covered in text and illustrations that seemed to shift and move in the firelight. "The Silvermane bloodline," Mira began, her finger tracing the elaborate script, "descends from the first wolves who learned to shift. But they were different from the rest. Where other wolves gained the ability to transform between human and beast, the Silvermanes gained something more. They became conduits for the wild magic itself, the primal force that existed before civilization, before rules, before packs and territories and hierarchies." Alara leaned closer, studying an illustration of a massive silver wolf wreathed in flames. Its eyes were the same color as hers, that eerie glowing silver that she'd only started seeing in mirrors since the rejection. "Your ancestors could do things other wolves couldn't even imagine," Mira continued. "They could speak to the elements, command the weather, heal mortal wounds, see the threads of fate. But their greatest gift and their greatest curse was the silver fire. The flame I've been feeling," Alara said softly. "Yes. But what you've felt so far is just the beginning." Mira turned the page, revealing an illustration that made Alara's blood run cold. A silver wolf, massive and terrible, standing in the center of what looked like a battlefield. Flames poured from its body, consuming everything around it. Wolves, trees, entire mountains reduced to ash. "The silver fire is both creation and destruction," Mira said. "In the right hands, it can heal, protect, transform. In the wrong hands, or in the hands of someone who can't control it." She tapped the illustration. "This is what happened 3,000 years ago. A young Silvermane named Aldara lost control during a pack war. Her grief and rage fed the fire until it consumed everything within 50 miles. They say the desert to the south was once a forest, before Aldara's flames turned it to glass and sand." Alara stepped back from the book, her heart hammering. "And you think I could do that?" "We think you have the potential to do that," Theron said carefully, "which is why you need training. The fire responds to emotion. The stronger the feeling, the stronger the reaction. Your mother spent years learning to control it. You'll need to do the same. How much time do I have?" Mira and Theron exchanged a look that made Alara's stomach drop. "That's the problem," Mira said slowly. "The prophecy your mother saw, the one about you standing in the ashes, forging something new, it wasn't metaphorical. Child, she saw a specific event, a convergence." "What kind of convergence?" Mira turned more pages, finally stopping on a spread covered in astronomical charts and lunar calculations. "Every 1,000 years, the 3 moons align. When that happens, the veil between the physical world and the magical one grows thin. The wild magic surges, and those with the gift can access power they normally couldn't touch. The last alignment, Theron added, his voice grim, happened during the Silvermane Purge. Your grandparents used the surge of power to try to defend their pack. It's part of why the other wolves were so terrified they'd never seen magic that strong. But it also exhausted them, made them vulnerable. And that's when the allied packs struck the killing blow. Alara's mouth went dry. When is the next alignment? 3 weeks, Mira said. The winter solstice, the longest night of the year, when all 3 moons will sit in perfect conjunction for exactly 1 hour. 3 weeks. 21 days to learn to control a power that had taken her mother years to master. 21 days before every wolf with old magic in their blood would be at their strongest. 21 days before whatever her mother's prophecy had foreseen would come to pass. I can't, Alara whispered. I can't learn everything I need to know in 3 weeks. It's impossible. Your mother didn't think so, Mira said gently. She saw you ready. She saw you powerful. And Lissa's visions never lied. But what if she was wrong? Alara's voice broke. What if I'm not who she thought I'd be? What if I'm just— Stop. Theron was in front of her suddenly, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes boring into hers. I need you to listen to me very carefully, Alara. You've spent your whole life being told you're not enough. Not strong enough. Not worthy enough. Not good enough. And you believed it. You let their limitations become your truth. His grip tightened. But I knew your mother. I knew your father. I knew what their bloodline was capable of. And I've been watching you for 20 years, seeing glimpses of who you really are beneath all the masks and walls. So trust me when I tell you this. You are exactly who your mother knew you'd be. The power is already inside you. We're just teaching you how to access it. Alara wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the certainty he seemed to have about her. But all she could see was that illustration, the silver wolf destroying everything around it, consumed by flames it couldn't control. What if I hurt people? She asked. What if I lose control like Aldara did? Then we'll be there to pull you back, Theron said simply. That's what Pack is for, Alara. You don't have to carry this alone. Pack. The word felt foreign after so many years of being an outsider, but as she looked around the room at Theron with his unwavering belief, at Mira with her weathered wisdom, at the other wolves she could sense gathering outside, drawn by her presence, she felt something stir inside her chest. Not the silver flame. Something else. Something quieter but just as powerful. Hope. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. Teach me. Mira's smile was radiant. Then we begin tonight. The sacred grove is waiting. The sacred grove was a short walk from the settlement, accessed by a spiral path that wound up the mountainside. By the time they reached it, full night had fallen, and all 3 moons were visible in the sky, the largest silver and bright, the others smaller and tinged with blue and gold. The grove itself was a circle of ancient trees, their branches heavy with silver leaves that chimed like bells in the mountain wind. In the center was a stone altar, and around it, more of those glowing symbols carved into the earth. At least 24 wolves waited there, sitting in a loose circle around the altar. When Alara entered, they all rose as one, their eyes reflecting the moonlight. The witnesses, Mira explained. When a Silvermane undergoes awakening, the magic is too powerful to be contained alone. These wolves have volunteered to anchor you, to share the burden of your power so it doesn't consume you. Alara looked at the faces around her, young and old, male and female, all watching her with expressions of solemn determination. Why would they do that? They don't even know me. Because this is bigger than you, Theron said. This is about what you represent. Hope. Change. The possibility that our kind can be more than we've become. He gestured to the altar. Ready? No, she absolutely wasn't ready. But she walked to the altar anyway, because what other choice did she have? Mira followed, carrying a silver bowl filled with water from the sacred pool. She placed it on the altar, and gestured for Alara to kneel. The awakening ritual is simple in concept, difficult in execution, Mira said, her voice taking on the cadence of ceremony. You'll drink from the sacred water and open yourself to your power. No barriers, no resistance, no fear. You let it fill you completely, show you what you truly are. And then, She smiled. Then you take control. That's it? Alara asked. That's everything. Mira lifted the bowl. The ritual will connect you to your ancestors, to every Silvermane who came before. You'll see their memories, feel their emotions, understand their magic. It will be overwhelming. You may scream, you may cry, you may beg for it to stop. Comforting, Alara muttered. But you'll survive, Mira continued, her voice softening. Because you're stronger than you know, child. And because we're here. She offered the bowl to Alara. Alara took it with shaking hands. The water inside glowed with that silver light, and she could feel the magic radiating from it, calling to the flame inside her chest. She looked at Theron. He nodded once, his expression fierce with pride. She looked at the circle of wolves. They'd all shifted, their wolf forms magnificent in the moonlight, their eyes glowing as they watched her. She looked up at the 3 moons, hanging like promises in the velvet sky. Then she lifted the bowl to her lips and drank. The water tasted like starlight and fire and ancient forests. It burned going down, but not painfully, more like recognition, like every cell in her body was remembering something it had forgotten. The bowl slipped from her fingers and shattered on the stone altar. And then the world exploded. Images flooded her mind, thousands of years of memories compressed into seconds. She saw the first Silvermane, a woman with silver hair and flames dancing in her palms, teaching other wolves how to touch the wild magic. She saw battles and celebrations, births and deaths, victories and betrayals. She saw her grandmother calling lightning from a clear sky. She saw her grandfather healing a dying child with nothing but touch and will. She saw her mother, young and radiant, her belly swollen with pregnancy, placing her hands on Alara's tiny form and weaving the spell that would hide her power for 20 years. I'm sorry, her mother whispered across time and death. I'm sorry you have to carry this burden. But I know you can. I've seen who you become. And she's magnificent. My silver flame. She's everything I dreamed, and more. Alara tried to speak, tried to call out to the ghost of her mother, but she couldn't form words. The power was rising inside her now, responding to the ritual, to the sacred water, to the 3 moons hanging overhead. The silver flame erupted from her body in a column of light that shot straight up into the sky. She felt her bones shifting, changing, her body trying to transform. But it wasn't the familiar shift into her wolf form, the one she'd done hundreds of times. This was different. Bigger, wilder. Her true form, finally waking after 20 years of sleep. The pain was excruciating. She did scream then, unable to hold it back, her voice mixing with the howls of the wolves around her as they channeled their own energy into the ritual, helping her contain the surge of power. Let go, a voice whispered. Her mother's voice, or maybe her own, she couldn't tell anymore. Stop fighting what you are. Stop trying to be small. Let go. So she did. She stopped resisting, stopped trying to control the uncontrollable, stopped being afraid of her own power. She opened herself completely to the silver flame and let it show her the truth. Her body finished shifting, and when she looked down, she didn't see the small brown wolf she'd always been. She saw silver fur that gleamed like moonlight, paws that looked too large, too powerful. She looked at her reflection in the shattered pieces of the bowl and saw eyes that burned with inner fire. This was her true form. This was what her mother had hidden. This was what the other packs had feared. And God's help her, it was glorious. The silver flame settled around her like a cloak, no longer threatening to consume her, but instead responding to her will. She could feel it, the connection between her intention and the magic's manifestation. She thought about warmth, and the flames grew brighter. She thought about protection, and they formed a barrier around the grove. She thought about peace, and they dimmed to a gentle glow. Control. She had control. The wolves around her howled in celebration, their voices rising in a chorus that echoed across the mountains. And in the center of it all, Alara lifted her silver head and added her voice to theirs, a sound that was both wolf and something more, something ancient and powerful and free. When the howling finally died down and Alara shifted back to human form, she was exhausted but exhilarated. Mira wrapped a cloak around her shoulders, her eyes shining with tears. You did it, child. You've awakened your true self. Theron knelt beside her, his expression awed. "How do you feel?" Alara thought about it, searching for the right words. She felt raw. She felt powerful. She felt terrified and excited, and like she'd finally found a piece of herself that had been missing her entire life. "I feel," she said slowly, "like I'm finally meeting myself for the first time." Theron's smile was brilliant. "Good. Because now the real work begins." Above them, the 3 moons shone bright, counting down the days until their alignment, until the prophecy would unfold, until Alara would have to decide what kind of wolf, what kind of Silvermane she wanted to be. But for now, surrounded by her new pack in this sacred place, she let herself simply be. Let herself feel the power humming in her veins without shame or fear. Let herself imagine a future where she wasn't running anymore, where she was strong enough to stand and fight, where she was exactly, perfectly, magnificently enough. Chapter 5. The attack came on the 3rd day of training. Alara had spent the previous 2 days learning the fundamentals: how to call the silver flame without emotion driving it, how to shift between her forms without the transformation tearing her apart, how to sense the wild magic flowing through the earth beneath Shadow Peak. Mira was a patient teacher, but demanding. Theron pushed her harder, insisting she needed to be combat-ready, not just magically competent. She was in the training circle when the warning howl split the morning air. Intruders. Eastern border. Many. Theron's head snapped up from where he'd been watching her practice defensive shields. Everyone inside. Now. The other wolves scattered, but Alara stood frozen, her heart hammering. What's happening? What we knew would happen eventually. Theron's expression was grim as he strode toward her. Someone's challenging the sanctuary law. Get to the main hall with Mira. If they breach the perimeter, I'm not hiding while you fight. The words came out before Alara could stop them. Alara. No. She set her jaw. You said I needed to be combat ready. Well, here's my chance. You've had 3 days of training, then I guess we're about to find out if it was enough. She could feel the silver flame responding to her determination, warming her blood. I'm not running anymore, Theron. I told you that. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to argue. Then his expression shifted into something that might have been pride mixed with exasperation. Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. They reached the eastern perimeter in minutes, where a dozen Shadow Peak wolves had already formed a defensive line. Beyond them, on the far side of the boundary markers, ancient stones carved with protective runes stood at least 30 wolves, all in battle formation, all radiating hostility. At their head was a wolf Alara recognized even in his shifted form. Dane, Kale's beta. Her former friend looked different than he had that night by the ravine. Harder, more dangerous. And he wasn't alone. Beside him stood wolves wearing the colors of not just the Northern Territories, but 3 other packs as well. An alliance. They'd formed an alliance to come after her. Shadow Peak, Dane's voice rang out, amplified somehow so it carried across the distance. We come under the authority of King Aldrich of the Northern Territories. Surrender the criminal Alara Thorne, and there will be no bloodshed. Criminal? Theron's voice was cold enough to freeze fire. On what charges? Treason against the crown. Dangerous manifestation of forbidden magic. And murder. Alara's blood ran cold. Murder? I haven't killed anyone. Tell that to the 3 guards who died in the palace gardens the night you escaped. Dane's eyes blue and accusing fixed on her. Your magic killed them, Alara. Burned them from the inside out. Their families are demanding justice. No. No. She'd used the silver flame to blind them, to escape, but she hadn't, she couldn't have. But even as she tried to deny it, doubt crept in. She'd been panicking that night, her power wild and uncontrolled. The flame had exploded from her hands with force she didn't understand. What if she'd hurt them worse than she realized? What if in her desperation to escape, she'd actually— You're lying. Theron's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. I've seen Aldrich's tactics before. He's trying to justify breaking sanctuary law by painting her as a murderer. The bodies don't lie, Alpha Theron, and King Aldrich has the right to pursue justice across territory lines when blood has been spilled. Dane took a step closer to the boundary. The old laws are clear. Sanctuary doesn't extend to those guilty of murder. A murmur ran through the Shadow Peak wolves. Uncertainty. Even here, even among those who'd welcomed her, the accusation carried weight. "Show me the bodies," Theron demanded. "Show me proof that her magic was responsible. We don't answer to you." Another wolf stepped forward, older, with gray in his muzzle and scars crisscrossing his face. "Commander Garrett of the Western Ridge Pack. But if you insist on harboring a murderer, Shadow Peak, then you share her crimes. Stand aside, or we'll consider this an act of war." "War?" Theron laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You bring 30 wolves to my doorstep and threaten war? I could have 300 here in minutes. Every pack in these mountains answers to Shadow Peak when the old laws are invoked." "The old laws are dead," Garrett snarled. "Just like the Silvermanes should be. You're protecting an abomination, Theron. A bloodline that nearly destroyed us all once before. How long before she loses control again? How many more will die because you're too blinded by old loyalties to see the threat?" The words hit Alara like physical blows. Abomination. It was the same word she'd heard whispered throughout her life, always just out of earshot, always accompanied by suspicious looks and closed doors. She'd spent 20 years trying to prove she wasn't a threat, trying to be normal and acceptable and safe. And here she was, being called a murderer and an abomination, with wolves ready to go to war over her existence. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was too dangerous. Maybe the world would be safer if she just... No. The voice in her head was her mother's, fierce and certain. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare let them make you small again." Alara stepped forward, past Theron's protective stance, past the line of Shadow Peak wolves. She walked right up to the boundary markers, close enough that she could see the hatred in Dane's eyes. "You want me?" she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "Then come get me. Cross the boundary, break the old laws. Let's see how many packs stand with you when you spit on 3,000 years of tradition." "Alara, what are you doing?" Theron hissed behind her, calling their bluff. She locked eyes with Dane, because they're not here for justice. They're here because they're afraid of what I represent, afraid that the power they tried to erase is coming back, afraid that their little hierarchies and kingdoms might not matter as much as they thought. Dane's hackles rose. "You think this is about fear? This is about survival. Your grandmother leveled an entire pack settlement when she lost control. Your great-aunt started the War of Ashes. Your bloodline is cursed, Alara. And everyone knows it except you." "My bloodline is powerful," she corrected. "There's a difference. And if that scares you, if the idea of wolves who can't be controlled by your kings and councils terrifies you so much, then maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe it's a world that's so broken it can only function by destroying anything that threatens the status quo." "Enough philosophy," Commander Garrett growled. "Last chance, Theron. Give her up. Or..." The arrow came out of nowhere. 1 second, Alara was standing at the boundary, facing down the allied packs. The next, pain exploded in her shoulder as something punched through her flesh. She stumbled backward, her hand coming away bloody, an arrow shaft protruding from just below her collarbone. Silver-tipped, designed to disrupt magic, designed to kill wolves like her. "No!" Theron's roar shook the mountainside. The Shadow Peak wolves surged forward as one, but the allied packs were already moving. They crashed across the boundary markers, shattering the old law, committing themselves to war. Chaos erupted. Wolves collided in a tangle of fangs and claws. The sound was deafening snarls and howls, and the sickening crunch of bone. Alara tried to focus, tried to call the silver flame, but the arrow in her shoulder was burning, the silver tip leaching poison into her system, disrupting her connection to the magic. Someone slammed into her from the side. She went down hard, the impact driving the arrow deeper. Agony whited out her vision. When it cleared, Dane was standing over her in his human form, a silver blade in his hand. "I'm sorry," he said, and he actually looked like he meant it. "I liked you, Alara. But this is bigger than friendship. Bigger than both of us." He raised the blade, and then Theron was there, his massive wolf form barreling into Dane and sending him flying. The beta hit a tree with a crack that sounded like breaking ribs. Theron planted himself over Alara, his lips pulled back in a snarl that promised death to anyone who came closer. "Mine to protect," he growled, his voice more beast than man. "Touch her again and I'll tear your throat out with my teeth." But there were too many. Even as Theron stood guard, more wolves were pressing forward. Shadow Peak was outnumbered, and they'd been caught off guard by the sudden attack. Bodies littered the ground, both sides had casualties, and still they came. Alara tried to push herself up, tried to help, but her shoulder was useless. The silver poison was spreading through her veins like ice, numbing everything it touched. She was going to lose consciousness soon, and if she did, if she couldn't fight back, then Theron would die defending her. All of Shadow Peak would die defending her, because of what she was, because she existed. No. Not like this. She wouldn't let them die for her. Alara grabbed the arrow shaft with her good hand and pulled. The pain was indescribable, white-hot, and all-consuming. But the arrow came free with a wet sound that made her stomach heave. Blood poured from the wound, but with the silver removed, she could feel her magic stirring again. Weak, unsteady, but there. She closed her eyes and reached for the silver flame. Not with desperation or fear like before, but with intention. With the control Mira had been teaching her, she breathed through the pain and imagined the flame as a living thing, separate from her emotions, responsive to her will. Protect. She commanded it. Protect without killing. Shield without destroying. The silver flame erupted from her body in a wave of light that expanded outward in all directions. But this time, instead of wild fire that consumed everything, it formed a barrier, a dome of silver energy that separated the combatants, forcing wolves apart, creating space. The fighting stopped. Everyone froze, staring at the glowing barrier, at Alara standing in the center with her shoulder still bleeding, her eyes burning with silver light. "Enough," she said, her voice amplified somehow by the magic. "Enough bloodshed, enough war, enough fear." Commander Garrett shifted back to human form, his expression stunned. "Impossible. You shouldn't be able to. The silver arrow should have." "Should have what? Killed me? Broken me?" Alara walked forward, the barrier moving with her, keeping the wolves separated. "I'm not that easy to kill, Commander, and I'm done being afraid of what I am." She looked at each of them. Dane, Garrett, the wolves from the allied packs. "You came here for a monster, for someone dangerous and out of control. But look around you. I could have killed every single one of you just now, could have let the flame consume you the way it did in your worst nightmares, but I didn't. Because unlike you, I don't believe that power has to equal destruction." "You killed our guards," Dane said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Did I? Or did your king sacrifice them to give you a reason to come after me?" Alara's eyes narrowed. "Think about it, Dane. You've known me your whole life. Have I ever been violent? Ever hurt anyone unnecessarily? Or does it make more sense that Aldrich, who was already trying to eliminate me, would use their deaths as justification?" She saw the doubt flicker across his face, saw it mirrored in some of the other wolves' expressions. The Silvermane Purge wasn't about protecting anyone, Alara continued, her voice ringing out across the clearing. It was about consolidating power, about eliminating the one bloodline that couldn't be controlled or manipulated. And now, 20 years later, you're doing the same thing, following orders without questioning them, attacking sanctuary territory, breaking the oldest laws we have. For what? Because a king told you to? The King Garrett started. "The king is terrified," Alara interrupted. "Terrified that wolves like me represent everything his carefully constructed hierarchy can't account for. Magic that doesn't bow to crowns, power that doesn't need permission. And yes, that power can be dangerous, but it can also be beautiful. It can heal, it can protect, it can change things for the better." She lowered the barrier slightly, though she kept it ready to raise again. "I'm not asking you to trust me. I haven't earned that. But I am asking you to think, to question whether the world you're fighting for is really worth preserving. Or whether maybe, just maybe, it's time for something new." For a long moment, no one moved. The silence was deafening. Then Dane lowered his weapon. "I need to think about this." "Dane," Garrett snarled. "The king's orders." "The king isn't here." Dane's voice was firm. "And I'm not going to war over orders I'm not sure I believe in anymore." He looked at his fellow Beta, at the Northern Territories wolves. "Anyone who wants to continue fighting, stay. Anyone who wants to think before they act, come with me." More than half the Northern Territories wolves followed him as he turned and walked away from the boundary. The remaining allied packs looked uncertain, their resolve crumbling. Commander Garrett's face was purple with rage. "This isn't over, Silvermane. You think you've won, but all you've done is delay the inevitable. More will come, stronger forces, and next time, they won't hesitate." "Let them come," Theron said, moving to stand beside Alara. "Shadow Peak stands with the Silvermane bloodline, and the old laws are clear. Sanctuary means sanctuary. Any pack that violates it will answer to all of us." The allied packs retreated, dragging their wounded with them. But Garrett's final words hung in the air like a curse. When they were finally gone, Alara's legs gave out. Theron caught her before she hit the ground, his arms strong and steady around her. "That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," he said. "Why not both?" She tried to smile, but the pain in her shoulder was overwhelming now that the adrenaline was fading. "Mira!" Theron was already carrying her toward the settlement. "Get the healing pool ready, now." The last thing Alara saw before darkness claimed her was the faces of the Shadow Peak wolves, watching her with expressions of awe and loyalty, and something that looked almost like worship. She'd won this battle. But Garrett was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Not even close. The war for her survival, and for the future of all wolves, had just begun. Chapter 6. Alara woke to firelight and the scent of herbs. She was back in the main hall, lying on a low bed near the hearth. Her shoulder was bandaged, the pain reduced to a dull throb, instead of the screaming agony it had been. Someone had changed her clothes. She wore a soft tunic that smelled like pine and smoke, like Theron. Speaking of whom, the Alpha sat in a chair beside her bed, his head bowed, his hands clasped between his knees. He looked exhausted, his dark hair falling across his forehead, shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "How long was I out?" Alara's voice came out rough. Theron's head snapped up, relief flooding his features. 2 days. The silver poison was worse than we thought. Mira said another hour, and it would have reached your heart. 2 days. Alara tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Her shoulder protested, and dizziness washed over her. "Easy." Theron was there instantly, his hand on her good shoulder, steadying her. "The wound is healed, but your body needs time to recover from the poison. The others?" "Shadow Peak, are they? We lost 3 wolves. 6 more were seriously injured, but they'll survive." His jaw tightened. The allied packs lost more. Dane took his people and left, but Garrett and the others, he shook his head. "They retreated, but they'll be back, with reinforcements." Guilt twisted in Alara's stomach. 3 wolves dead. Because of me. No. Theron's voice was sharp. 3 wolves dead because the allied packs violated sanctuary law. Because they chose war over peace. Don't you dare take responsibility for their choices. But how could she not? If she wasn't here, if she just kept running instead of accepting Theron's help, those wolves would still be alive. Shadow Peak would still be safe, untouched by the conflicts that seemed to follow her like a curse. "I can see what you're thinking," Theron said quietly. "And you're wrong. You don't know what I'm thinking. You're thinking this is your fault. That you bring nothing but trouble. That maybe everyone would be better off if you disappeared." His eyes, those strange shifting colors, held hers. "Am I close?" "Too close." Alara looked away, unable to hold his gaze. "Alara." He waited until she looked back at him. Those 3 wolves died defending something they believed in. The old laws, the right to sanctuary, the principle that no wolf should be hunted for what they are rather than what they've done. They died heroes, not victims of your existence. That doesn't make them any less dead. No, it doesn't. Theron stood, running a hand through his hair in frustration. But their sacrifice means something. It means Shadow Peak has drawn a line. We've declared ourselves openly on your side, and that changes everything. Other packs are watching. Some will condemn us, but others. His expression turned hopeful. Others might finally have the courage to stand up to wolves like Aldrich. Alara wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that something good could come from all this bloodshed. But she'd spent too many years learning that hope was a dangerous thing. You should rest, Theron said, moving toward the door. Mira will want to check on you when she wakes. And there's stew on the fire if you're hungry. Wait. The word came out before Alara could stop it. Don't go. Please. He paused, his hand on the doorframe. Why? Because. She struggled to put it into words. Because every time I close my eyes, I see that arrow coming. I see Dane standing over me with that blade. I see the hatred in their eyes when they called me an abomination. Her voice cracked, and I'm afraid that when I fall asleep, I'll wake up, and this will all have been a dream. That Shadow Peak won't be real. That you won't be real. That I'll be alone again. Theron turned back to face her, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. Not pity, not even sympathy, something deeper. Something that looked like understanding born of shared pain. I know what it's like, he said quietly, crossing back to her bedside. To be alone. To feel like the entire world is against you. To wake up every morning, wondering if today's the day you finally break. He sat on the edge of her bed, close enough that she could feel his warmth. After your mother died, I withdrew from everything. Threw myself into building Shadow Peak into what it is now, a sanctuary for the lost and the different. But inside, I was hollow. I'd failed her. Failed your father. Failed you by not being there when it mattered most. You were keeping a promise, Alara said. Waiting until I was ready. Was I? Or was I just too afraid to face you? Theron's smile was bitter. Every year that passed, I told myself I was being patient, following your mother's instructions. But the truth is, I was terrified. Terrified that when I finally found you, you'd hate me for not intervening sooner. Terrified that I wouldn't know what to say, how to explain everything I should have protected you from. He looked at his hands. And then, when your power finally manifested, when I knew it was time, I was even more afraid. Because what if I wasn't enough? What if I couldn't teach you what you needed to know? What if I let you down the way I let your mother down? Alara reached out with her good hand and covered his. His skin was warm, slightly rough, solid and real. You haven't let me down, haven't I? He turned his hand over, his fingers threading through hers. You've been here less than a week, and you've already been poisoned defending my territory. 3 of my wolves are dead. More are coming, and I don't know if I can keep you safe from what's heading our way. I don't need you to keep me safe, Alara said. I need you to teach me to keep myself safe, to be strong enough to stand on my own. You already are. Theron's grip on her hand tightened. What you did out there, creating that barrier, separating the combatants without killing anyone. Alara, your mother couldn't do that until she'd trained for years. You did it on instinct, with silver poison in your veins, and 3 days of instruction. It wasn't enough. People still died. People die in war. That's the nature of conflict. His voice turned fierce. But you gave some of them a choice. You made Dane question his orders. You planted doubt in minds that had been certain. That's more powerful than any flame, Alara. The ability to change hearts and minds. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to accept the praise, the validation. But a lifetime of rejection had taught her to be wary of compliments. To look for the catch. Why do you care so much? The question burst out of her. You said you made a promise to my mother, but it's more than that. I can feel it. There's something else driving this. Something you're not telling me. Theron was quiet for so long that Alara thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, his thumb tracing absent patterns on the back of her hand. Your mother saved my life, he said finally. I was 17, stupid and arrogant, and convinced I was invincible. I challenged an alpha twice my age over some perceived slight. I can't even remember now. He would have killed me, should have killed me. But Lissa intervened. She stood between us and told that alpha that if he wanted to kill a child for youthful stupidity, He'd have to go through her first. A small smile touched his lips. No one was willing to go through a Silvermane, so he backed down, and I lived. But more than that, your mother taught me something that day. She said, "Power without purpose is just destruction, Theron. But power, used to protect the vulnerable, to give voice to the silenced, to create space for those who have none, that's what makes us more than beasts." He looked at Alara, and there were tears in his eyes. She gave me purpose, showed me what I could become, instead of what I was. And when she died, I swore I'd honor that gift by doing for others what she'd done for me. Shadow Peak exists because of her. Every wolf we've sheltered, every life we've saved, every stand we've taken it, all traces back to the lesson she taught me 20 years ago. His voice dropped to a whisper. And now here you are. Her daughter. Her legacy. And you're so much like her, Alara. The way you stood up to those wolves despite your fear, the way you chose protection over destruction, the way you question everything, refuse to accept the world as it is. He touched her cheek gently, keeping you safe, helping you grow into your power. It's not just about honoring a promise. It's about honoring the wolf who saved my life and taught me what it meant to be more than just an alpha. Alara's throat was tight with emotion. I wish I'd known her. You do know her. Theron's smile was sad and sweet. She's in every choice you make, every time you stand up instead of backing down, every time you choose compassion over cruelty. Lissa lives in you, little flame. And she would be so incredibly proud of who you're becoming. The tears Alara had been holding back finally spilled over. Not tears of sadness exactly, but of something more complex. Grief for the mother she never knew. Gratitude for the man who'd watched over her all these years. Relief that she wasn't alone anymore. Fear of what was coming. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she could be the wolf her mother believed she would be. Theron pulled her carefully into his arms, mindful of her injured shoulder, and let her cry against his chest. He didn't offer empty platitudes or tell her everything would be okay. He just held her, solid and steady, his hand stroking her hair while she released 20 years of pent-up grief and loneliness. When the tears finally subsided, Alara pulled back, embarrassed. "Sorry. I got your shirt wet. It'll dry." Theron's eyes were kind. "Feel better?" Surprisingly, she did, like something that had been festering inside her had finally been lanced. "Yeah. I think so." "Good." He stood, moving to the fire and ladling stew into a bowl. "Now eat. You need your strength back." Alara accepted the bowl and took a bite. It was rich and savory, filled with meat and vegetables, and she realized she was starving. She ate in silence while Theron settled back into his chair, watching the fire. "Can I ask you something?" Alara said between bites. "Anything. The prophecy my mother saw about me standing in the ashes, forging something new. Do you really think I can do that? Change things?" Theron considered the question carefully. "I think prophecies are tricky things. They show possibilities, not certainties. Your mother saw a version of the future where you had the potential to reshape the world. Whether you actually do that depends on the choices you make along the way." "That's not very reassuring." "No, but it's honest." He looked at her. "The future isn't written in stone, Alara. It's written in choices. Every decision you make from this point forward will either move you closer to the future your mother saw, or create a different path entirely. Neither outcome is guaranteed. So, no pressure then," Alara said dryly. Theron laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Exactly. No pressure at all." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Alara finishing her stew while Theron tended the fire. Outside, she could hear the sounds of the settlement wolves going about their evening routines. The murmur of conversation, the howl of someone greeting the rising moons. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds, so different from the chaos of the Northern Territories. "Theron?" Alara set down her empty bowl. "Thank you. For everything. For watching over me all these years. For bringing me here. For believing in me when I don't even believe in myself." He turned from the fire, his expression soft. "You don't need to thank me, Alara. You're Pack now. And Pack takes care of each other." "Pack." The word settled into Alara's chest like a warm coal, burning away some of the cold loneliness that had lived there for so long. "Will you stay?" she asked quietly. "Just until I fall asleep?" "I know it's childish, but it's not childish." Theron moved his chair closer to her bed and sat down. "And yes, I'll stay. As long as you need." Alara settled back into the pillows, her eyes already growing heavy. The combination of healing, emotional release, and a full stomach was pulling her toward sleep. But this time, the prospect didn't frighten her. Because Theron was here, Shadow Peak was here, she wasn't alone anymore. "Theron?" Her voice was sleepy now. "I'm glad it was you who found me by the river. I'm glad it was you who brought me home." She didn't see his expression, her eyes already closed. But she heard the smile in his voice when he replied, "So am I, little flame. So am I." As sleep claimed her, Alara could have sworn she felt the gentlest touch on her forehead. A kiss, feather-light and tender, like a blessing. And for the first time in 20 years, she slept without nightmares, without fear, without wondering if she'd wake up alone, because finally, impossibly, miraculously, she was home. Chapter 7. The message arrived on the morning of the 10th day. Alara was in the training circle with Mira, practicing advanced shielding techniques, when a scout burst into the settlement. His fur was matted with sweat, his sides heaving, his eyes wild with urgency. "Alpha," he called, shifting to human form. "A delegation, from the Northern Territories. They're requesting parley under the white flag." Theron, who'd been overseeing combat drills with a group of younger wolves, went very still. "How many?" "5. Unarmed. Dane leads them." The scout's expression was troubled. "And Alpha Kale is with them." The name hit Alara like a physical blow. Kale, her former mate, the wolf who'd rejected her, set all of this in motion, hadn't bothered to reach out once in the 10 days, since she'd nearly died defending herself from his father's forces. What could he possibly want now? "Tell them we'll meet at the boundary stones," Theron said, his voice carefully neutral. 1 hour. "And make sure everyone knows weapons ready, but concealed. This could be a trap." The scout nodded and shifted, racing back toward the perimeter. Theron turned to Alara, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to be there. You don't owe him anything." "I know." Alara's hands were trembling, but she clenched them into fists. "But I need to hear what he has to say. Need to look him in the eye and see." She trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. See if he regretted it? See if there was any remorse for what he'd put her through? See if the mate bond, even broken, still meant anything to him at all? "Then I'll be right beside you," Theron said. "And if he says one thing that hurts you, one word that makes you doubt yourself, I'm ending the parley. Understood?" Despite everything, Alara smiled. Understood. An hour later, she stood at the boundary stones, flanked by Theron and Mira, with 24 Shadow Peak wolves positioned strategically in the trees. Her heart hammered against her ribs, and the silver flame flickered restlessly inside her chest, responding to her anxiety. Then they emerged from the forest. 5 wolves, all in human form, all wearing white armbands to signify peaceful intent. Dane was in front, his expression carefully neutral. Behind him walked 3 wolves Alara didn't recognize, and at the rear, moving with that fluid grace she'd once found so captivating, was Kale. He looked different than she remembered. Thinner, maybe. There were shadows under his silver eyes, and his dark hair was longer, falling into his face. He wore simple traveling clothes rather than the formal attire of his station, and he wouldn't meet her gaze. Good. Let him feel uncomfortable. Let him squirm. "Alpha Theron," Dane said, stopping at the boundary. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "State your business," Theron said curtly. "And make it quick. Shadow Peak doesn't have patience for games." "No games. We come with a proposition." Dane glanced at Kale, who still stood silent. "The Northern Territories wish to make amends for the attack on your territory. King Aldrich has agreed to pay reparations for the wolves who died, and to formally acknowledge Shadow Peak's right to sanctuary." Alara's eyes narrowed. "In exchange for what?" Now Dane looked directly at her, and there was something in his expression that made her stomach drop. Pity? Regret? In exchange for a trial, he said quietly. A formal hearing before the Council of Alphas. You would present your case, prove that you're not a threat, that the Silvermane bloodline can coexist peacefully with the other packs. If the Council rules in your favor, all charges are dropped. You'd be free to live wherever you choose, unmolested. And if they rule against her? Theron's voice was dangerously soft. Then she submits to their judgment. Dane's jaw tightened, which could range from exile to permanent containment. Containment. Alara laughed, the sound harsh. You mean imprisonment, or execution. The Council would be fair. The Council is made up of alphas who were alive during the Purge. Mira interjected, her aged voice sharp with anger. Wolves who participated in the slaughter of her family. You expect us to trust them to be impartial? I expect you to recognize that this is the best offer you're going to get. Dane's voice rose. King Aldrich wanted to declare open war. He wanted to rally every pack in the territories and burn Shadow Peak to the ground. I convinced him to offer this alternative. A chance for peace. For justice, without bloodshed. Justice? Alara's voice was shaking now. Where was justice when your king tried to have me killed? Where was justice when he falsely accused me of murder? Where was justice when he sent you, my friend, to hunt me down like an animal? Dane flinched. I know I failed you, Alara. And I'm sorry. But this trial is your chance to clear your name. To prove to everyone that the stories about the Silvermanes were lies. Some of the stories were true, Alara said quietly. My bloodline is powerful. My magic is dangerous if misused. But that doesn't make me a monster. Then prove it. For the first time, Kale spoke. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't used it in days. Come to the capital. Face the Council. Show them what you showed me that night in the hall, that you're more than your power. That you're worthy of. He cut himself off, his jaw clenching. Worthy of what? Alara wanted to scream. Worthy of living? Worthy of acceptance? Worthy of being his mate before he threw her away like garbage? You have some nerve, Theron growled. You rejected her. You stood by while your father tried to execute her. You sent wolves to violate sanctuary and hunt her down, and now you want her to walk into a trap disguised as a trial? It's not a trap. Kale's eyes finally met Alara's, and the pain she saw there made her breath catch. I know you have no reason to trust me. I know I betrayed you in the worst way possible, but Alara, please, this is your only chance. If you don't take it, the war that's coming will destroy everyone. Shadow Peak, the Northern Territories, every pack caught in between. Hundreds will die. Maybe thousands. And you expect me to prevent that by putting my head on the chopping block? Alara's voice was bitter. By trusting the same wolves who murdered my family? I expect you to do what you've always done, Kale said, his voice breaking. To be braver than the rest of us. To choose hope over fear. To believe that things can change. The words pierced something deep inside Alara's chest. Because they were her words, spoken back to her. Words she'd said to Kale during the early days of their mate bond, when he'd been drowning in the weight of his responsibilities, and she'd tried to remind him that duty didn't have to mean sacrificing joy. He'd remembered. After everything, he'd remembered. Alara, Theron said quietly, you don't have to do this. We can weather whatever comes. Shadow Peak has survived worse. Have you? Dane interjected. Because the forces Aldrich is assembling won't just be the allied packs from before. He's calling in favors, making promises, painting Shadow Peak as harboring a weapon of mass destruction. By the time he's done, you'll be facing half the territories. Can you survive that? Silence. Heavy and suffocating. When would this trial take place? Alara asked. No, Theron said immediately. Alara, you can't be seriously considering. When? She repeated, her eyes fixed on Kale. The winter solstice, Kale said. During the 3-moon alignment, the Council wants to see your power at its peak, to assess the true extent of what you're capable of. Of course, the alignment, when the wild magic would be at its strongest, when every wolf with old blood would be watching, judging, deciding whether she deserved to exist. And if I agree to this trial, Alara said slowly, King Aldrich calls off his war? Shadow Peak is left in peace? You have my word, Kale said. Your word. Alara laughed, the sound hollow. Forgive me if that doesn't mean much anymore. Kale flinched like she'd struck him. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I'm trying to make this right, Alara. I'm trying to, his voice cracked. Please, let me try to make this right. There was something in his eyes. Something desperate, and pleading, and real. For a moment, Alara saw not the alpha who'd rejected her, but the wolf underneath, the one who'd once held her during thunderstorms, because he knew they frightened her, the one who'd laughed at her terrible jokes, and listened to her dreams, and made her feel, for just a little while, like she mattered. What happened to that wolf? Where did he go? I need time, Alara said finally, to think about this, to discuss it with Shadow Peak. You have until tomorrow at sunset, Dane said. After that, the king will assume you've refused, and he'll move forward with his plans. One day? Mira's voice was outraged. You expect her to make a decision that could determine her life or death in one day? One day is all I could get him to agree to. Dane's expression was grim. I'm sorry. I wish I could give you more. We'll have an answer by tomorrow, Theron said, his hand on Alara's shoulder. Now leave. Your presence isn't welcome here. Dane nodded and turned to go. The other 3 wolves followed, but Kale lingered, his eyes still locked on Alara's. I'm sorry, he said, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. For everything. I'm so sorry. Then he was gone, disappearing into the forest with the others, leaving Alara standing at the boundary with her heart in pieces all over again. The council that night was heated. Every adult wolf in Shadow Peak crowded into the main hall, their voices rising in argument. Some advocated for war, better to die fighting than to send Alara to a rigged trial. Others counseled caution, the offer might be genuine, and refusing it would mean the death of innocents. Alara sat silently through it all, her mind churning. It's suicide, one wolf argued. The Council of Alphas has already made up their minds. They'll find her guilty no matter what evidence she presents. But what if they don't? Another countered. What if she's so impressive, so clearly in control of her power, that they can't justify executing her? You're naive if you think facts will matter to wolves like Aldrich. And you're a coward if you think we should just accept war as inevitable. The arguing grew louder, more fractious. Alara watched Theron trying to maintain order, his expression growing more frustrated by the minute. This was tearing Shadow Peak apart, wolves who'd lived in harmony for years now turning on each other because of her. Enough. Mira's voice cut through the noise like a blade. The elderly seer stood, and somehow, despite her age and frailty, she commanded the room's attention. This isn't our decision to make. It's Alara's. Every eye turned to her. The weight of their gazes was crushing. What do you want to do, child? Mira asked gently. Alara stood on shaking legs. I don't want anyone else to die because of me. I don't want Shadow Peak torn apart by war. I don't want to be the cause of more suffering. Her voice grew stronger. But I also don't want to walk into a trap. Don't want to give my enemies exactly what they want on a silver platter. She looked around the room, at the faces of wolves who'd welcomed her, protected her, believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. If I go to this trial, she continued, I need to know that Shadow Peak will survive whether I come back or not. That you'll continue being a sanctuary for the lost and different. That my mother's vision of a world where power doesn't equal oppression will continue. You're coming back, Theron said fiercely. We won't let them. You can't stop them if the council rules against me. Alara's eyes held his. We both know that. If they declare me guilty, you'd have to go to war to save me. And that war would destroy everything you've built. Then I'll destroy it, Theron's control finally snapped. I'll burn it all down before I let them kill you like they killed your mother. The raw emotion in his voice stunned the room into silence. She was my best friend, Theron continued, his voice breaking. And I couldn't save her. I've lived with that failure for 20 years, Alara. I can't. I won't lose you too. So if you're asking for my blessing to walk into that trial, you won't get it. I'll lock you in the mountain caves before I let you sacrifice yourself." Alara crossed to him, placing her hands on either side of his face, forcing him to look at her. "This isn't about sacrifice. It's about choice. For 20 years, I let others make my choices for me. Let them tell me who I should be, what I should hide, how small I should make myself. But I'm done with that. I'm done being afraid." She smiled, even though tears were streaming down her face. "My mother gave me power. You gave me the tools to control it. Now I need to use it, to stand up and show the world that the Silvermane bloodline isn't something to fear, it's something to hope for. And if they don't see it that way?" Theron's voice was anguished. "If they look at all your power and brilliance and still condemn you, then at least I'll know I tried." Alara released him, turning to address the room. "I'm going to the trial. I'm going to face the Council of Alphas during the alignment, and show them exactly what I am. And if they still choose fear over hope, destruction over creation, then that says more about them than it does about me." The room erupted into protest, but Alara raised her hand, silver light dancing in her palm. "This is my choice," she said firmly. "And I'm asking you to respect it. To trust that I know what I'm doing. To believe in me the way you've asked me to believe in myself." Slowly, reluctantly, the protests died down. One by one, the wolves nodded their acceptance. Even Theron, though his expression promised this conversation was far from over. Only Mira looked unsurprised, her milky eyes seeing something the others couldn't. "So it begins," the old seer murmured. Just as Lissa foresaw, that night, Alara couldn't sleep. She stood on her balcony, watching the 3 moons track their slow paths across the sky, counting down to the alignment, 11 days. That's all she had to prepare for the most important moment of her life. She heard the door open behind her but didn't turn. "You're making a mistake," Theron said quietly. "Maybe. But it's my mistake to make." He joined her at the railing, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I can't lose you. You won't." Alara looked up at him. "I promise, Theron. I'll come back." "You can't promise that. Watch me." He turned to face her fully, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Your mother made me promise to protect you, but she also made me promise something else." He reached up, tucking a strand of silver hair behind her ear. "She made me promise that if you ever needed to fly, I wouldn't clip your wings to keep you safe. That I'd let you be who you were meant to be, even if it terrified me." His hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "So, I'm going to keep that promise, even though every instinct I have is screaming at me to lock you away where no one can hurt you. I'm going to let you fly, little flame. But I swear on everything I am, if they try to bring you down, I'll burn the world to ash before I let them succeed." The intensity in his voice, in his eyes, made Alara's breath catch. There was something there, something that felt like more than just the promise to a dead friend. Something that felt like, no. She couldn't think about that. Not now. Not when everything was already so complicated. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me." Theron smiled, sad and fierce and beautiful. "Always, Alara. Always." They stood together in silence, watching the moons, neither willing to acknowledge what hung unspoken between them, because some things were too fragile to name, too precious to risk, too dangerous to hope for. Tomorrow, she would send word to the Northern Territories, would agree to the trial that would determine not just her fate, but the fate of every wolf with magic in their blood. But tonight, just for tonight, she let herself stand beside someone who saw her clearly and didn't flinch. Someone who believed she was worth saving. Someone who might, just possibly, be falling for the girl with silver flames and too much power and a heart that refused to give up hoping for better things, even when hope seemed like the most dangerous thing of all. Chapter 8. The journey to the Northern Territories took 3 days. Alara traveled with an escort, Theron, Mira, and 10 Shadow Peak wolves, all armed despite the supposed peace. The northern delegation met them at the border with Dane leading, his expression unreadable. Kale was notably absent. "He's preparing for the council meeting," Dane explained when Alara asked. "As the alpha who rejected you, He'll be called to testify. Testify? As if this were an actual trial, instead of a spectacle designed to justify her elimination. The capital was exactly as Alara remembered: grand stone buildings, elaborate gardens, wolves moving with practiced grace through streets designed to impress. But now, instead of feeling inadequate in the face of all this refined civilization, she felt something else: pity. All this beauty, all this order, all this carefully constructed hierarchy, and it was built on a foundation of fear. Fear of anything different, anything powerful, anything they couldn't control. They were escorted to guest quarters in the palace, luxurious rooms that felt more like gilded cages. Guards were posted outside, ostensibly for their protection, more likely to ensure they didn't leave. 3 days until the alignment, Mira said, settling into a chair by the window. 3 days until everything changes. Alara paced the room, too restless to sit. Through the window, she could see wolves gathering in the courtyard, alphas arriving from across the territories, come to witness the trial, come to see if the last Silvermane would burn or bow. A knock at the door made her jump. Theron answered it, his body language immediately defensive. But it was only a servant, carrying a sealed letter. "For Lady Alara," the young wolf said nervously. From Alpha Kale." Alara's heart stuttered. She took the letter with hands that barely trembled, waiting until the servant left to break the seal. The message was brief. "Meet me in the old garden at midnight. Please. There are things you need to know before the trial. Things I couldn't say in front of the others." "Kay." "Absolutely not," Theron said, reading over her shoulder. "It's obviously a trap. Or, it's genuine." Alara folded the letter carefully. He said, "There are things I need to know." He said a lot of things, Alara, most of them lies. Maybe. But what if he's telling the truth? What if there's something about the trial I need to understand? She looked at Theron. "I have to go. Then I'm coming with you." "No." Alara's voice was firm. "If it is a trap, I need you here. Safe. Able to get Mira and the others out. And if it's not, Kale won't talk freely if you're there." Theron's jaw clenched. "I don't like this. I know. But trust me. Please." After a long moment, he nodded reluctantly. "But if you're not back by dawn, I'm coming after you. Guards, protocol, and politics be damned. Deal." Midnight found Alara slipping through the palace corridors, using paths she remembered from her brief time as Kale's mate. The old garden was on the eastern edge of the grounds, a wild, overgrown place that had been abandoned years ago. She and Kale had discovered it together, had spent stolen hours there talking about their dreams, back when she'd foolishly believed those dreams included each other. The garden looked the same: moonflowers blooming silver in the darkness, vines crawling up crumbling statuary, the scent of jasmine heavy in the air. And there, beside the broken fountain where they'd first kissed, stood Kale. He turned when she approached, and even in the dim light, she could see how haggard he looked, like he hadn't slept since the rejection ceremony. "Good. You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "You said there were things I needed to know." Alara kept her distance, her hand ready to call the silver flame if necessary. "So talk." Kale ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as nervousness. "The trial is rigged. My father has already decided your fate. He's been meeting with the other alphas, offering them incentives to vote against you. Territory concessions, trade agreements, promises of protection. By the time you stand before the council, the verdict will already be decided." Alara's stomach dropped, even though she'd suspected as much. "Then why did you convince me to come? Why go through the charade of a trial at all?" "Because I'm trying to save you." Kale's voice rose, then dropped back to an urgent whisper. "Alara, if you'd refused the trial, my father would have declared war on Shadow Peak. Hundreds would have died. But this way, there's still a chance." "A chance at what?" "You just said the verdict is decided. A chance to escape." Kale stepped closer, his silver eyes intense. "During the alignment, when your power is at its peak, and every wolf is focused on the trial, that's when you run. I've arranged for horses, supplies, A route through the mountains that my father's patrols don't cover. You can make it to the Eastern Territories, maybe even across the sea to the wolf packs in the Old World, somewhere my father's influence doesn't reach. Elara stared at him, trying to understand. You want me to run? To spend the rest of my life hiding? I want you to live. Cale's voice cracked. I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you. I know I'm the reason you're in this position. But please, Elara, please don't let your pride get you killed. Pride? The word came out sharp as broken glass. You think this is about pride? Isn't it? You want to prove yourself to wolves who will never accept you. Want to show the world that the Silvermanes weren't monsters. But they don't care, Elara. They're too afraid of what you represent to see you clearly. Then I'll make them see. Elara's hands clenched. I'll stand before that council and show them exactly what I am, and if they still choose to condemn me, then at least I'll know I didn't run, didn't hide, didn't let their fear dictate my life. You'll die. Cale grabbed her shoulders, his grip almost painful. Do you understand? My father will execute you the moment the council delivers their verdict, and there's nothing I can do to stop him. Then why are you trying? Elara met his eyes, searching. Why do you care what happens to me? You rejected me, Cale. You chose your duty, your pack, your precious political alliance over our mate bond. So why does it matter to you now whether I live or die? Cale's face crumpled. Because I was wrong. About everything. About Serafina. About duty. About what it means to be alpha. I thought his voice broke. I thought I was protecting the pack by choosing stability over chaos. By choosing the safe path over the uncertain one. But all I did was destroy the best thing that ever happened to me. Tears were streaming down his face now, and Elara hated that they affected her. Hated that part of her still wanted to comfort him, still felt the phantom ache of their severed bond. The night of the rejection ceremony, Cale continued. When your power manifested and I saw what you truly were, I've never been more terrified in my life. Not of you. Of myself. Because in that moment, I understood what I'd thrown away. Not just a mate, but a partner, someone extraordinary, someone who could have helped me change everything. He released her shoulders, stepping back. My father knew. That's why he pushed me to reject you before the bond could solidify. He saw what you were, or suspected, and he knew that if we fully mated, if you stood beside me as Luna, I would never be his puppet again. You would have made me strong enough to challenge him. To change the Northern Territories into something better. So he manipulated you into destroying our bond before it could threaten his control. Elara's voice was hollow. The pieces were clicking into place with horrible clarity. And you let him. I didn't know. Cale's voice rose desperately. I swear, I didn't know what you were. I just thought he made it sound so reasonable. Serafina was trained for politics. You weren't. She had connections. You didn't. He made me believe I was making the hard choice for the good of the pack, and I was stupid enough to listen. You were stupid enough to trust duty over your heart, Elara corrected, to believe that love was a luxury you couldn't afford, rather than the foundation everything else should be built on. I know. And I've regretted it every moment since. Cale moved closer again, and this time his hand cupped her cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. I can't undo the rejection. The bond is severed. And even if I wanted to try to restore it, which I do, God's help me. I do, it would take both of us willing it, and I know you'll never forgive me enough for that. But I can still save your life. I can still give you the chance at happiness I took away. Elara wanted to pull away from his touch. Wanted to rage at him, hit him, make him feel even a fraction of the pain he'd caused her. But she was so tired. Tired of anger. Tired of hurt. Tired of carrying the weight of his mistakes along with everything else. I don't want to run, Cale, she said quietly. I don't want to spend my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when your father's assassins will find me. I want to stand before that council and show them that I'm not afraid. That the Silvermane bloodline isn't something to destroy, it's something to celebrate. They'll kill you for that pride. Maybe. Elara gently removed his hand from her face. But at least I'll die being exactly who I am. Not hiding, not diminished, not pretending to be less than I am to make others comfortable. Can you say the same, Cale? Can you honestly tell me you're living the life you want? Or are you just following your father's script? The question hung between them like a blade. Cale's expression shifted, something breaking behind his eyes. Some final wall crumbling. I don't know who I am anymore. Without you, without the mate bond to anchor me, I feel lost. And I hate it. Hate that I did this to myself. Hate that I'm too much of a coward to stand up to my father the way you're preparing to stand up to the entire council. Then stand with me. The words came out before Alara could stop them. Tomorrow, when I face the council, stand with me. Tell them the truth about why you rejected me. About your father's manipulation. About the corruption in the system we're all supposed to respect. I can't. Cale's voice was anguished. Alara, I can't. My father would, the pack would. Would what? Reject you? Cast you out? Alara's laugh was bitter. Welcome to my world, Cale. Welcome to what it feels like to be on the outside of everything you've ever known. She turned to leave, done with this conversation, done with his excuses and regrets and useless guilt. Alara, wait. Cale's voice stopped her. There's something else you need to know. About the trial. About what my father is planning. She looked back at him, wary. The council will demand a demonstration of your power during the alignment, Cale said, his voice urgent. They'll provoke you, try to make you lose control. And my father has people positioned in the crowd wolves he's ordered to shift and attack if you show any sign of the silver flame. He'll claim you were threatening the council, that you attacked first. It will give him the justification he needs to have you executed immediately, without waiting for a verdict. Alara's blood ran cold. He's going to stage an attack? Make it look like I'm dangerous? Yes. And there's more. Cale's expression was grim. Serafina. She's not who you think she is. She's a nightshade from the bloodline of wolves who specialize in poisons and manipulation. My father arranged our alliance specifically because her family has access to compounds that can suppress magic. If you demonstrate your power tomorrow, she'll be in position to dose you with something that will make you lose control. Turn your silver flame wild and destructive, exactly the way they're claiming it naturally is. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that Alara could barely process it. Your father would frame me? Make me look like the monster he's been claiming I am? He would do anything to protect his power. Cale's voice was heavy with shame, including sacrificing an innocent wolf, including manipulating his own son into rejecting his mate, including staging a massacre and blaming it on you. Alara's mind raced. If what Cale was saying was true, then the trial wasn't just rigged. It was a death trap designed to justify her execution while making it look necessary. Even if she demonstrated perfect control, they would poison her, force her to lose it, and then claim she was too dangerous to live. She couldn't win. The game was designed so she couldn't win. Unless, thank you for the warning. Alara said quietly. I'll be ready. Ready? Cale looked confused. Alara, you can't possibly think you can still go through with this. Not after what I've just told you. Why not? A small smile played at her lips. Your father is planning to make me look like a monster? Fine. Let's give him exactly what he's expecting. Let's see what happens when the monster he created decides to stop playing by his rules. Alara, what are you? But she was already walking away, her mind churning with possibilities. Cale had given her more than a warning. He'd given her the framework of his father's plan. And if she knew what was coming, if she could anticipate the attack and the poison, she could turn it against them. Behind her, Cale called her name one more time, desperate and pleading. But Alara didn't look back. She had a trial to prepare for, and a world to change. Dawn found Alara back in her quarters, explaining everything to Theron and Mira. The old seer listened with narrowed eyes, her fingers tapping a rhythm on the arm of her chair. A trap within a trap, within a trap, Mira murmured. Aldrich is more cunning than I gave him credit for. Can we counter it? Theron asked. If we know about the poison, about the staged attack, we can do more than counter it, Alara said, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. We can use it. Turn his plan against him. She outlined her idea, risky, dangerous, requiring perfect timing and control beyond anything she'd demonstrated before. When she finished, Theron was shaking his head. "It's suicide," he said flatly. "It's brilliant," Mira countered. "And it's exactly what Lissa would have done." Theron looked between them, his expression torn. Finally he sighed. "You're sure about this?" "Because once you start down this path, there's no turning back." "I've never been more sure of anything," Alara said, which was a lie. She was terrified. But she was also done running, done hiding, done letting fear dictate her choices. Tomorrow, during the 3-moon alignment, she would stand before the Council of Alphas, and she would show them exactly what a Silvermane could do. Not as a weapon, not as a monster, but as something far more dangerous. A wolf with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Let them try to destroy that. Chapter 9. The winter solstice arrived with unusual warmth. Alara woke before dawn, her body thrumming with energy she couldn't contain. Outside her window, the sky was already lightening, pale gold bleeding into deep purple. The stars fading one by one, but she could still see them all 3 moons, hanging like promises in the heavens, beginning their slow dance toward alignment. By sunset, they would converge. And everything would change. She dressed carefully in the clothes. Mira had prepared a simple white tunic and pants, unadorned except for a silver belt woven with protective runes. No weapons, no jewelry, nothing that could be used to claim she'd come to the trial with violent intent. "You look like a sacrifice," Theron said from the doorway, his voice rough. "Good." Alara turned to face him. "That's exactly what they're expecting." He crossed to her, his hands framing her face with heartbreaking tenderness. "This is your last chance to change your mind. We could leave right now, be halfway to the Eastern Territories before they even realize we're gone, and spend the rest of our lives running, looking over our shoulders, watching Shadow Peak burn in retaliation." Alara covered his hands with hers. "No. This ends today. One way or another. I can't lose you." Theron's voice broke. "These past weeks, watching you grow into your power, seeing you smile without fear in your eyes, Alara, you've become..." He trailed off, unable or unwilling to finish. "What?" she prompted softly. "What have I become?" For a moment, she thought he might say it, might finally put words to the thing that had been growing between them, the connection that went beyond promises to dead friends or shared cause. But instead, he pressed his forehead to hers, his eyes closing. "Everything," he whispered. "You've become everything." The confession hung in the air between them, too precious to examine, too fragile to acknowledge fully, because examining it meant admitting what they both knew, that in a few hours, Alara might be dead, that this moment, this connection, might be all they ever got. "Theron," Alara said quietly, "if something goes wrong today, nothing will go wrong. If something goes wrong," she continued firmly, "I need you to promise me something. Don't go to war over me. Don't let Shadow Peak be destroyed trying to avenge me. Just remember me. Remember that I chose this, that I went willingly, with my eyes open, fighting for something I believed in. Stop talking like you're already dead." Theron's grip on her face tightened. "You're going to survive this. You're going to stand before that council and shine so brightly, they'll have no choice but to see you clearly. And then you're coming home to Shadow Peak, and we're going to have a very long conversation about..." He cut himself off again. "About what?" His eyes opened, meeting hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "About the future, about possibilities, about things I have no right to hope for but can't seem to stop wanting." Before Alara could respond, before she could ask what he meant, Mira's voice called from the outer room. "It's time. The council is assembling." Theron released her slowly, reluctantly, like letting go physically hurt. "Promise me you'll come back." "I promise I'll try." "Not good enough." Alara smiled, even though her heart was breaking. "It's the best I can do." The grand hall had been transformed. Where once it had held the rejection ceremony, now it was arranged for judgment. A semicircle of stone thrones faced a raised platform in the center, 12 seats for the 12 alphas of the council. Behind them, risers had been erected, filled with hundreds of wolves from across the territories, all come to witness the trial of the last Silvermane. Alara walked down the center aisle, flanked by Theron and Mira, with the Shadow Peak wolves following behind. Every eye in the hall tracked her movement, some with curiosity, some with fear, many with open hostility. At the front, King Aldrich sat in the largest throne, his expression triumphant. Beside him, in a smaller seat, sat Seraphina, beautiful and poised, her dark eyes glittering with malice barely concealed. And there, standing just to the side, was Cale. Their eyes met across the distance. Cale's expression was anguished, pleading. Alara's was calm, resolved. She'd made her choice. Alara Thorne, last of the Silvermane bloodline. Aldrich's voice boomed across the hall. You stand before the Council of Alphas, accused of multiple crimes against our kind. How do you plead? Alara stepped onto the platform, alone now. Theron and Mira had been directed to seats in the audience. She was isolated, exposed, exactly as Aldrich wanted her. I plead not guilty, she said clearly, to all charges. A murmur ran through the crowd. The charges are as follows, Aldrich continued, pulling out a scroll. Murder of 3 Northern Territories guards. Illegal manifestation of forbidden magic. Endangerment of the pack hierarchy, through refusal to submit to proper authority, and conspiracy to resurrect the Silvermane bloodline, which was deemed a threat to all wolves, and disbanded by council decree 3 generations ago. Each charge was designed to paint her as dangerous, unstable, a threat that needed to be eliminated. Alara listened calmly, her hands relaxed at her sides, her breathing steady. To these charges, Aldrich said, his smile sharp, we add one more, seduction and corruption of Alpha Cale, manipulating the mate bond to gain access to Northern Territories' secrets and power. Cale flinched visibly. Alara's jaw clenched. So that's how they were framing it, as if she had been the manipulator, rather than the victim of rejection. How do you answer these charges? Aldrich demanded. I murdered no one, Alara said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. My magic is not forbidden, it is ancient, yes, and powerful, but it is mine by birthright. I have endangered no hierarchy except the one built on fear and oppression. And I manipulated no one. Alpha Cale rejected me, as everyone in this hall witnessed, because he saw your true nature. Aldrich stood, his voice rising, because the mate bond allowed him to sense the danger you represented. He did what any responsible alpha would do. He protected his pack from a threat. Or, Alara countered, he was manipulated by a father who couldn't stand the thought of his son bonding with someone he couldn't control. Gasps echoed through the hall. Aldrich's face went purple. You dare. I dare speak the truth, Alara interrupted, which is more than anyone in this hall has done since I arrived. You didn't call this trial to determine my innocence or guilt. You called it to justify a decision you'd already made, to execute me in front of witnesses so you can claim it was justice rather than murder. Enough! Aldrich's roar shook the rafters. You will be silent, or I will have you silenced. By all means, try. Alara spread her arms. Show everyone what this trial really is. Show them the truth you're so desperate to hide. For a moment, she thought Aldrich might actually order her executed right then. His hand went to the sword at his belt, his eyes wild with rage. But then another alpha spoke, an elderly wolf from the Eastern Territories, his voice calm and measured. King Aldrich, perhaps we should allow the accused to present her defense before we pass judgment. The old laws do require it. Aldrich forced himself to sit back down, his expression murderous. Fine. Let her speak. Let her condemn herself with her own words. This was it. The moment Alara had been preparing for. She took a breath, feeling the 3 moons outside beginning their convergence, feeling the wild magic starting to surge through her veins. I am Alara Thorne, she began, her voice steady. Daughter of Lissa and Garrett Silvermane, granddaughter of Alara Silvermane, who could call lightning from clear skies, great-granddaughter of Soren Silvermane, who healed the plague that nearly destroyed our kind 200 years ago. I carry a bloodline you have tried to erase from history. A bloodline you have painted as monstrous, as dangerous, as too powerful to be allowed to exist. She turned slowly, addressing the entire hall. But here's what you never mention in those stories. My family didn't start wars, they ended them. They didn't hoard power, they shared it, teaching other wolves how to connect with the wild magic. They didn't destroy, they created. Hospitals, schools, sacred sites where any wolf, regardless of pack or status, could come to learn. Lies, Aldrich spat. Your grandmother leveled an entire settlement. My grandmother defended her pack from an unprovoked attack, Alara corrected. An attack led by your grandfather, King Aldrich, an attack that killed her mate and her children. Yes, she used her power. Yes, it was devastating. But it was self-defense, not aggression. And you've spent 3 generations rewriting that story to justify genocide. The word hung in the air like smoke. That's what the Silvermane Purge was, Alara continued, her voice gaining strength. Genocide. The systematic elimination of an entire bloodline because you were afraid of what we represented. Not just power, but change. The possibility that your carefully constructed hierarchies didn't matter as much as you thought. That magic and heart and vision could matter more than bloodlines and political alliances, and who could snarl the loudest. She locked eyes with Aldrich. You killed my family. You hunted down every Silvermane you could find and murdered them. You burned our histories, destroyed our sacred sites, and rewrote the stories to make us into monsters. And when you thought you'd finally succeeded, when you thought the last Silvermane was dead, I survived. I grew up, and I awakened. The silver flame flickered to life in her palms, dancing like captured moonlight. The crowd gasped, some shrinking back, others leaning forward with fascination. This is what you fear, Alara said, letting the flame grow. This power that you can't control, can't predict, can't bend to your will. But look at it. Really look at it. She shaped the flame into forms: a bird that flew around the hall, a flower that bloomed and released petals of light, a shield that protected rather than attacked. Every movement was controlled, precise, beautiful. This is what the Silvermanes were, she said. Not weapons, not monsters, creators, healers, wolves who understood that power without compassion is just brutality, but power with compassion can change the world. She let the flame fade, her hands falling to her sides. So yes, I am powerful. Yes, I have magic you don't understand. But I am not dangerous, not unless you make me so, by forcing me to defend myself. I am not a threat, not unless you see change itself as threatening, and I am not the monster you've claimed I am. That's just the story you tell yourselves to justify the atrocities you committed against my family. Silence, absolute, deafening silence. Then, from the back of the hall, a single wolf stood. Then another. Then a dozen more. They didn't speak. Didn't howl, just stood, a silent declaration of support that rippled through the crowd. Aldrich's expression twisted with fury. Sit down, all of you, sit down. But they didn't. More wolves stood, including Alara's breath caught, including several of Kale's own pack members, including Dane, who met her eyes across the distance and nodded once. This trial is a farce, someone shouted from the crowd. The Silvermanes were murdered, not defeated, another voice called. Let her live! A young wolf cried out. The hall erupted into chaos. Wolves arguing, shouting, some calling for Alara's execution, others demanding justice. And through it all, the 3 moons outside continued their convergence, the wild magic growing stronger with every passing moment. Aldrich stood, his face contorted with rage. I will have order. And that's when Seraphina made her move. Alara saw it happening. As if in slow motion, the beautiful wolf pulling a vial from her sleeve, uncorking it, throwing the contents directly at Alara's face. The liquid caught her across the mouth and nose, bitter and burning. Nightshade poison. The compound designed to make her lose control. Alara felt it immediately, her connection to the silver flame going wild, the magic surging beyond her control. The temperature in the hall dropped 30 degrees in seconds. Frost spread across the walls. The flames in the torches turned silver and blazed high, threatening to catch the banners overhead. She's losing control, Aldrich roared triumphantly. Just as I warned. Seize her. Put her down before she kills us all. And right on cue, the wolves Aldrich had positioned in the crowd shifted and lunged for the platform. For Alara, but Alara was ready. She'd known this was coming. Had planned for it. And in the moment when everyone expected her to panic, to lash out wildly, to prove all their fears right. She did something else entirely. She laughed. The sound cut through the chaos like a bell, clear and bright and utterly fearless. "Is that the best you can do?" Alara said, her voice amplified by the magic surging through her. "Poison me? Stage an attack? Try to make me into the monster you've been claiming I am?" She spread her arms wide, and the silver flame erupted from her body in a column of light that shot through the ceiling and into the sky above. Every wolf in the hall could see it now, the raw, undeniable power of a Silvermane at the peak of her strength during the 3-moon alignment. But the flame didn't burn, didn't consume, didn't destroy. It transformed. The light spread throughout the hall, touching every wolf present, and for just a moment, one perfect, crystalline moment, they all felt it. The wild magic. The connection to something greater than themselves. The possibility of a world where power didn't mean dominance, where difference wasn't threatening, where change was celebrated rather than feared. And in that moment, they saw Alara clearly. Not as a monster, not as a weapon, but as a wolf who carried immense power and chose to use it for creation rather than destruction, for healing rather than harm, for hope rather than fear. "This is what you wanted to destroy," Alara said, her voice echoing through every mind in the hall. "This connection, this magic, this possibility, because you knew that if wolves like me existed, if we were allowed to thrive, your world would have to change, and change terrifies you more than any power ever could." She pulled the light back into herself, the silver flame settling like a cloak around her shoulders. The poison was still working, still making her magic wild and unpredictable, but she didn't fight it. She channeled it, directing it with intention rather than control. "I am not your victim," she declared. "I am not your monster. I am not your sacrifice. I am Alara Silvermane, and I will not apologize for existing. I will not diminish myself to make you comfortable. I will not die quietly so you can continue pretending your fear is justified." She looked directly at Aldrich, her eyes blazing with silver fire. "So here's my verdict, Your Majesty. I find you guilty. Guilty of genocide. Guilty of corruption. Guilty of manipulating your son and poisoning this trial and trying to murder me in front of witnesses. And I'm done, playing by your rules." The wolves Aldrich had sent to attack her had stopped, frozen by the power radiating from Alara. The entire hall was transfixed, watching to see what would happen next. "I'm leaving," Alara said simply. "I'm walking out of this hall, out of this territory, and anyone who tries to stop me will regret it. Not because I'll kill them, I'm not the monster you think I am, but because I'm done being afraid, done hiding, done letting you dictate the terms of my existence." She stepped off the platform and started walking toward the doors. Theron and Mira immediately moved to join her, the Shadow Peak wolves forming a protective circle. "Stop her," Aldrich screamed. "Guards, kill her, kill them all." But no one moved. The guards looked at each other uncertainly. The other alphas on the council remained seated, their expressions ranging from shocked to thoughtful to, in a few cases, admiring. And the crowd of wolves who'd come to witness the trial parted like water, creating a clear path to the doors. Alara walked through them, her head high, her steps steady despite the poison still burning through her veins. She could feel it trying to tear her apart from the inside, trying to make her magic explode into true destruction. But she held on, channeling it, directing it, refusing to give Aldrich the satisfaction of seeing her break. She was almost to the doors when a voice stopped her. "Alara, wait." "Kale." She turned slowly, her expression neutral. "What?" He stood in the center of the aisle, his silver eyes locked on hers. And then, in front of everyone, in front of his father, his pack, the entire assembled council, he dropped to one knee. "I was wrong," Kale said, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "About everything. About duty. About power. About what it means to be alpha. You asked me to stand with you, and I was too much of a coward to say yes. But I'm saying it now." He looked up at his father, who was purple with rage. "King Aldrich, I formally challenge your right to rule the Northern Territories. You staged this trial, poisoned the accused, and attempted murder in front of the council. You are unfit to lead, and I will no longer follow your commands." Aldrich's roar of fury was inhuman. "You dare, you ungrateful, I'll have you." You'll have me what, father? Cale stood, his voice steady. Executed? Exiled? You've already taken everything that mattered to me. What more can you possibly do? He turned back to Alara. I can't undo the rejection. I can't erase the pain I caused you. But I can try to make it right by exposing the truth. By standing against the corruption you've been fighting alone. By being the alpha I should have been from the start. Alara studied him, this wolf who'd broken her heart, who'd rejected her in front of the entire pack, who'd come crawling back with apologies and regrets. Part of her wanted to accept his gesture, to let him join her cause, but another part, the part that had been burned too many times, knew better. Thank you for the truth, she said quietly. But I don't need you to stand with me, Cale. I need you to stand on your own. To be better, to fix the Northern Territories from the inside. That's how you make this right, not by following me, but by leading your pack toward the change you claim to believe in. She turned toward the doors again. And Cale? The next time you're tempted to choose duty over heart, remember this moment. Remember what your cowardice cost us both. Then she was through the doors and into the courtyard, where the 3 moons hung perfectly aligned in the darkening sky. The wild magic surged through her one final time, and Alara threw her head back and howled a sound of triumph and grief and defiance that echoed across the mountains. Behind her, other voices joined the howl. Theron, Mira, the Shadow Peak wolves, and impossibly wolves from the hall, from the trial, some of Cale's own pack, adding their voices to hers in a chorus that declared the world had changed. The age of silence was over. The age of hiding was done. The Silvermanes had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. So tell me something. Would you have chosen her side? Would you have stood up in that hall, knowing it might cost you everything, and declared that she deserved to live? Or would you have stayed silent, watching as power and fear tried to destroy something beautiful? Because here's the truth, we all face that choice eventually. The choice to stand with the different, the powerful, the threatening to the status quo. The choice to risk comfort for courage, to trade safety for what's right. Alara made her choice. She chose to burn bright even when the world wanted her dimmed. She chose to be exactly who she was. Consequences be damned. The question is, what would you choose? If this story lit a fire inside you, if Alara's journey made you feel something deep and true and uncomfortably honest, then do me a favor. Subscribe to Crimson Romance Collections, because this is what we do here. We tell stories about wolves who refuse to be tamed, about power that transforms instead of destroys, about love that's complicated and messy and worth fighting for. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me whether you're Team Alara or Team Cale or Team Theron. Tell me what you would have done in her place. Tell me your truth. Because stories like this, they're meant to be felt, shared, lived. And Alara's story? It's far from over. Chapter 10. They made it to the border of Shadow Peak territory by dawn. Alara stumbled the last 100 yards, the poison finally overwhelming her system, now that the adrenaline had faded. Theron caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her into his arms like she weighed nothing. Almost home, he murmured against her hair. Just hold on a little longer, little flame. She wanted to tell him she was fine, that she could walk on her own, but her tongue felt thick and her vision was blurring at the edges. The nightshade poison was designed to kill slowly, painfully, making the victim suffer before the end. But Alara wasn't planning on dying. Not today. Not when she'd finally found something worth living for. The healing pool was already prepared when they arrived. Mira must have sent word ahead. The ancient water glowed silver in the early morning light, welcoming. Theron waded in fully clothed, still holding Alara, lowering them both into the blessed warmth. The effect was immediate. The poison began to leach out of her system, turning the water around them briefly black before the magic purified it. Alara gasped, her back arching as the pain intensified for one horrible moment before finally beginning to ease. That's it, Theron murmured, his arms steady around her. Fight it. You've come too far to let Aldrich's poison win. Alara focused on his voice, using it as an anchor, while the healing water did its work. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time felt strange in the sacred pool, but eventually, the pain faded to a manageable ache, and she could breathe without feeling like her lungs were on fire. Better? Theron asked, his face creased with worry. Better, Alara confirmed, her voice rough but steady. Thank you. For everything. For believing in me even when I wasn't sure I believed in myself. Always. Theron's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. Alara, I need to tell you something. Something I should have said before the trial, but I was too afraid of. Alpha Theron. A scout burst into the chamber, his expression urgent. Riders approaching, at least 20, moving fast. They're flying the banner of the Eastern Territories. Theron's jaw clenched. Another attack? I don't think so. They're calling for parley. And their Alpha Lady Morgana, she's requesting to speak with Alara Silvermane specifically. Alara and Theron exchanged glances. Lady Morgana was legendary, the oldest Alpha in the territories. A wolf who'd ruled the Eastern Pax for over 60 years through a combination of wisdom and absolutely ruthless political maneuvering. If she was here, it meant something significant. Help me out, Alara said, trying to stand. Her legs wobbled but held. You just survived poisoning. And now I need to survive politics. Alara managed a weak smile. Come on, let's see what the great Lady Morgana wants. They met the Eastern delegation in the main hall. Alara wrapped in warm furs despite the healing pool's work. Lady Morgana was smaller than Alara expected, a tiny woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen everything the world had to offer and weren't impressed by any of it. So, Morgana said without preamble, studying Alara with unsettling intensity. You're the wolf who set the Northern Territories on fire without striking a single blow. Impressive. I didn't set anything on fire, Alara said carefully. I just spoke the truth. Same thing, in my experience. Morgana moved closer, circling Alara like a predator assessing prey. I was at the trial. Saw everything. The poison, the staged attack. Aldrich's little tantrum when his plan failed spectacularly. She stopped in front of Alara. You embarrassed him. Made him look weak. Foolish. Corrupt. He'll never forgive that. I know. Good. Because what comes next won't be pretty. Morgana settled into a chair, gesturing for Alara to sit as well. Aldrich is rallying support as we speak, claiming you used dark magic to manipulate the crowd, that the trial proved you're too dangerous to live. He's calling for a formal hunt, every pack in the territories working together to eliminate the Silvermane threat once and for all. Alara's stomach dropped. A formal hunt? But those haven't been called in. 200 years. I know. I was alive for the last one. Morgana's expression was grim. It's the nuclear option. Once called, every Alpha is obligated to participate or be declared outlaw themselves. Even Shadow Peak wouldn't be able to stand against that kind of unified force. Theron's hand found Alara's shoulder, squeezing gently. Then we fight. We'll make them regret ever. You'll die, Morgana interrupted flatly. Your pack. Everyone foolish enough to stand with the Silvermane. Is that what you want, Theron? To martyr yourself? And achieve nothing? Then what do you suggest? Alara asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. That I run? Hide? Let Aldrich win? I suggest, Morgana said, leaning forward, that you fight smarter. Aldrich's strength is in the old systems, the traditional hierarchies, but you just proved those systems are cracking. Did you see how many wolves stood up during your speech? How many questioned their alphas' authority? How many chose to howl with you instead of staying silent? But it wasn't enough. Aldrich still has the majority, for now. Morgana's smile was sharp. But majorities can shift. Alliances can change. And I didn't survive 60 years as Alpha by backing losing causes. She pulled a sealed scroll from her cloak and placed it on the table. This is a formal declaration. The Eastern Territories recognize the Silvermane bloodline as legitimate and necessary. We offer sanctuary, resources, and military support to any wolf persecuted for their magic or bloodline. Alara stared at the scroll, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. Why would you do that? You don't know me. You have nothing to gain by making an enemy of Aldrich. Don't I? Morgana's eyes glittered. Aldrich has been growing too powerful for years, swallowing smaller packs, forcing alliances through threats and manipulation. I've been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge him. And then you walked into that trial hall and proved you're exactly what I've been hoping for, a catalyst. Someone who could unite the wolves who are tired of living under Aldrich's thumb. You want to use me, Alara said slowly. As a symbol, a rallying point. I want to support you, Morgana corrected. There's a difference. You fight your fight however you choose. I'll simply ensure you have the resources to do it. She stood, preparing to leave. Think about my offer. You have 3 days before Aldrich's formal hunt begins. After that, the choice is made for you: run, hide, and die eventually. Or stand, fight, and maybe, just maybe, change the world. She paused at the door. Oh, and one more thing. The Northern Territories are fracturing. Kale's challenge to his father has split the pack down the middle. Some support the son, some the father, but everyone's choosing sides. Civil war is coming there, whether you're involved or not. Kale, Alara whispered. She hadn't thought about what her rejection of his support might mean for him. He's holding his own, from what my scouts report, but he could use allies. Just something to consider. Morgana's expression softened slightly. You're not responsible for saving everyone, girl. But if you choose to try, the Eastern Territories will stand with you. Remember that. Then she was gone, leaving behind the scroll and 1,000 new questions. That night, Alara stood on her balcony again, watching the moons begin their slow drift apart. The alignment was over. The wild magic was fading back to normal levels. But the changes that had begun, those were only just starting. You're thinking about Morgana's offer, Theron said, joining her. I'm thinking about everything. Alara leaned against the railing. 3 days until the hunt begins. 3 days to decide if I'm going to run or fight. 3 days to figure out if I'm brave enough to be what everyone seems to think I am. You're already brave enough. You proved that at the trial. Did I? Or did I just get lucky? Alara turned to face him. Theron, I'm terrified. What if I lead wolves into battle and they die because of me? What if I accept Morgana's support, and it turns out she's just using me for her own political games? What if I try to change the world and just make everything worse? What if you don't try? Theron countered. What if you run, and the wolves who stood up at the trial get punished for supporting you? What if you hide, and Aldrich consolidates power until no one can challenge him? What if you do nothing, and the world stays exactly as broken as it is now? He moved closer, his hands framing her face. You asked me earlier what you've become to me. I didn't answer because I was afraid. Afraid that saying it out loud would make it real, would give fate something to take away from me. But I'm done being afraid. His eyes held hers, intense and certain. You've become my hope, Alara, my belief that things can be better. My proof that power and compassion can coexist. You've become the reason I wake up believing we can actually win this fight. And his voice caught. I'm falling in love with you. Maybe already have fallen. And I know the timing is terrible. And I know you just ended a mate bond. And I know I have no right to ask for anything when your life is in danger. But I needed you to know. Before the hunt begins. Before everything gets more complicated. I needed you to know that you matter. Not as a symbol or a catalyst or the last Silvermane. Just as Alara, as the wolf who laughs at terrible jokes and cries during thunderstorms, and refuses to give up even when giving up would be easier. Alara's eyes burned with tears. Theron, you don't have to say anything, he said quickly. I'm not asking for promises or declarations. I just needed you to know that you're not alone. That whatever you decide, run or fight, accept Morgana's offer or refuse it, I'm with you. Shadow Peak is with you. We're not going anywhere. Alara reached up, covering his hands with hers. I don't know what I feel yet. The mate bond with Kale, it's only been a few weeks since it broke. And everything has been so chaotic, so intense. I don't trust my own emotions right now. I know. But, she continued, I do know that when I think about the future, about what comes after all of this, you're in it. Shadow Peak is in it. This feeling of finally being home, that's in it. She smiled through her tears. So maybe I'm falling too. Or maybe I'm just grateful. Or maybe it's too complicated to put into words right now. But whatever this is between us, I want to explore it. When things calm down. When I'm not running for my life. When we can just be two wolves. Figuring out what we mean to each other. I can wait, Theron said softly. I've waited 20 years already. I can wait a little longer. He leaned down, his forehead touching hers. They stood like that, breathing together, drawing strength from each other. And for just a moment, the weight of prophecies and politics and impending hunts faded away. For just a moment, they were simply two wolves, bruised and battered but still standing, still hoping, still believing that tomorrow might be better than today. The message arrived just before dawn. A scout burst into Alara's room, his face pale with fear. Alara, you need to see this. Now. She followed him to the eastern perimeter, where the trees were scorched black in a pattern that made her blood run cold. Someone had burned a message into the forest, letters 10 feet high, visible from miles away. The hunt begins at sunset. Run, little Silvermane. It won't save you. But it wasn't the message that made Alara's heart stop. It was what lay at the base of the scorched trees. A body, dressed in Northern Territories colors, with a silver dagger through its heart and a note pinned to its chest. Alara approached slowly, her hands shaking. She didn't need to see the face to know who it was. The build, the hair, the stance, even in death. Dane, her friend, her former beta, the wolf who'd tried to help her, who'd walked away from Aldrich's orders, who'd stood at the trial and supported her cause. Dead. Murdered and left as a warning. Alara pulled the note free with trembling fingers and read the elegant script. This is what happens to those who betray their alpha. This is what happens to those who stand with the Silvermane. This is what happens to anyone foolish enough to believe the old world is dying. The hunt begins at sunset, and this time, little wolf, there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, no sanctuary that will shelter you. Your family thought they could change the world too. Look how that ended. See you soon. Aldrich. It had to be Aldrich. Who else would murder one of his own wolves just to send a message? Alara's hands clenched around the note, silver flame flickering to life around her fingers. The rage that filled her was cold and sharp and absolute. Dane had been good, had been kind, had tried to do the right thing even when it was hard, and Aldrich had killed him for it. Alara, Theron said gently, his hand on her shoulder. I'm so sorry. She turned to face him, and whatever he saw in her eyes made him step back. No more running, Alara said, her voice deadly calm. No more hiding, no more trying to make peace with wolves who only understand violence. She looked at the scorched message, at Dane's body, at the dawning light that marked the beginning of her final day of freedom. Theron, send word to Lady Morgana. Tell her I accept her offer. Tell her to gather every pack that's tired of living under Aldrich's rule. Tell her, Alara's voice grew stronger, more certain. Tell her the Silvermanes are going to war. Alara, are you sure? I'm sure. She looked at him, silver fire blazing in her eyes. They wanted a monster? They're going to get one. Not the kind that destroys everything, the kind that tears down broken systems and builds something better in their place. She raised her voice, so all the Shadow Peak wolves gathering around could hear. Aldrich thinks he's hunting me? Fine. Let him come. Let them all come. Because I'm done being prey. The silver flame erupted from her body, a column of light visible for miles. A declaration that echoed across every territory. The hunt begins at sunset. Alara's smile was sharp as broken glass. Good, because so does the revolution. Far to the south, in the Northern Territories, King Aldrich stood at his window watching that column of silver light pierce the dawn sky. His expression was triumphant. She's taken the bait, he murmured to Seraphina, who stood beside him. The foolish girl thinks she can fight us. Thinks her little light show will inspire revolution, and if she succeeds? Seraphina asked quietly. She won't. Aldrich's smile was cruel. Because I have something she doesn't know about. Something that will end the Silvermane bloodline once and for all. He turned from the window, moving to a locked chest in the corner of his room. Inside, wrapped in cloth and chains, something pulsed with dark energy. The Shadow Stone. Aldrich whispered reverently. Created 3,000 years ago by the first Silvermanes, designed to contain wild magic. They thought they'd destroyed all of them. But I found one, and tonight, when the hunt begins, his laugh was horrible. Tonight, I'll use their own creation to trap her power, to lock it away where it can never threaten us again. And then, Serafina prompted, and then I'll make an example of her. She'll watch as I hunt down every wolf who stood with her, every pack that defied me, every single wolf who dared to believe the world could change. Aldrich's eyes glowed with madness. And when I'm done, when she's seen everything she hoped for, burned to ash, then I'll kill her. Slowly. Painfully. The way I should have killed her mother 20 years ago. He closed the chest, the dark pulsing fading as the chain sealed. Let her have her revolution, Aldrich said. It will make her fall so much sweeter. And in the ruins of an ancient temple, buried deep in the mountains where no pack had ventured in centuries, something stirred. Stone cracked, dust fell, and in the darkness, eyes opened, glowing with a silver light that had been sleeping for 3,000 years. A voice, ancient and feminine and powerful, whispered through the stones. She has awakened. The last daughter of the flame. The prophecy begins, and this time, the world will burn. This isn't over. Not even close. The hunt may begin at sunset, but Alara's story? It's just getting started. Will she survive Aldrich's trap? Will the revolution succeed? Will Theron's love be enough to anchor her when the darkness comes? Will Kael redeem himself? Will the Shadow Stone doom them all? And what waits in that ancient temple, ally or enemy? Salvation or destruction? The answers are coming. The war is beginning. And nothing will ever be the same. If you're still here, if you've followed Alara's journey from rejected wolf to revolutionary, then you're part of this story now. Part of the pack that believes in second chances and silver flames, and the possibility that broken things can be made beautiful again. So, subscribe to Crimson Romance Collections. Stay with us, because Alara's fight is our fight. Her hope is our hope. And her story, her impossible, beautiful, heartbreaking story, it's not done burning yet. The hunt begins at sunset. But the legend begins right now. This isn't over.